Welcome to the course, and what we're going to be looking at today is how we can find and open Excel. So for me on my desktop here, you can see that I have the Excel icon down in the bottom taskbar here. So when this is installed, I opted in so I could put it on the taskbar down here, but say you didn't have it on the taskbar for whatever reason, how could you get it onto your desktop or onto your taskbar? So we have the Windows button down here that we can click onto. And when we click onto this, we get this pinned section and we get a recommended section. What you can do is type in Excel. And once you type in Excel, you can see that the app pops up here and we get a couple of options here as well. So from here, we'd be able to pin it to the start and we'd also be able to pin it to the taskbar. So I'll just unpin it from the taskbar from the start. But within the start, it means basically when you click onto this bit here, it should show up within this section here. When we click into this then, so we can see that we have the pin to start. We're going to click on the pin to start, and now when we click back through, we can see that Excel is kind of pinned to that section there as it says, and now it just makes it a quick and easy way. That's if you don't want it on your desktop. So if you would like to keep it on your desktop, what we can do is we can right click on that part there, or you can type it into the search part, and we can open the file location. Once you open the file location, you can see that it shows you where Excel is saved to, and we're just going to right click onto that, and then we can go down here and we can see that there's a copy. We're just going to copy Excel and then close it, and now we're just going to go down and we just want to paste the shortcut. Pasting the shortcut then is just going to give you the little desktop icon, and we can just add that onto there, and then whenever we want to get into Excel now, we've got three different ways. So we have the little icon here, we have it down in the taskbar, or we have it pinned, and all you need to do is just double click into that shortcut and you can see that Excel has opened up nice and easy. So once we've opened Excel, then we can see that we're presented with screens similar to this, and the way that it's broken down is you can see that up at the top here we have new, and within this new section here we have all these different templates that's already pre-made from Excel. And if you want to look at some more of these templates, you have the ability to click over here and you can see that we have more templates, and you can click through there and they've got things like personal budgets, calendars, and kind of other different things, invoices and stuff. If you want to click on them, then you have the ability to kind of have a look through and see what there is there. And you can also download some more that they might not have kind of directly installed on there. The ones that we're going to be looking at then are the blank workbook for now, so we're going to have a look at that in a moment. But just while we're here, then you can see a recent down here, and this is all the recent Excel documents that we've opened. And as you can see, we've got all these different names and stuff, and obviously when they were last opened. We have the new, so we can just click on new and it'll open up blank workbook, and it has all the different templates. And we have the open, which will open different directories in your computer. Down at the bottom left hand corner, we have the account. So once you click onto that, you can see your account and what kind of memberships you're on and things like that. For me, I'm on the Excel 365. You're able to give feedback to Excel. And also you can click into the options section here and change anything within Excel before you kind of get started. And within this, there's options that we will need later on. But for now, we're just going to leave it as we'll come back into them. And I'll show you how to get into them when you're in Excel itself, just so that we can look at things like the developer tab and how we could potentially use that. So when you've got to this point, then what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we've got the home, and we're just going to double click on the blank workbook. Once you open up the blank workbook, you can see that you're presented with your Excel screen here, and we'll start to break this down so that we can understand this more and all the different things that we need to look at. So once we're into a new workbook, then what we're going to start to look at is the Excel interface itself. And we can see here that we have lots of different things going on. And we're going to start from the top and work our way down on this top section here. So within this top section, we have this what we call the quick access toolbar, which is just these little points here. And what we can do with these is if we click onto these, then we can make things really quick and easy for ourselves as we're working through things. So we can see that we can customize this here when we hover over this, and what we can do is we can see all of the different options that we currently have within that. If at any point you want to add anything more into this, then we have the ability here to add more commands, and we can see that it brings up this little pop-up here. And we have all the popular commands, and we can see that we have the quick access toolbar selected up here. So at any point that we want to do anything with this, then we could just simply select it and we could just click add, and it'll just move it over, adding the little symbol that we need into that point there. And rather than kind of finding things within menus, it's just a way of speeding things up a little bit for yourself. Underneath that then we have what is called the ribbon. So the ribbon includes all this area here, and this is where you're going to be working and finding a lot of the formatting options that you want and working within this area here. So you can see that at the top it has all these different tabs, and you might not have the developer tab currently highlighted within yours or even showing on yours, but don't worry, it's something that we'll come to later on and we will show you how to kind of put that into play. Clicking back to the home tab then, what we can do here is we can see that we have all these little different sections, and within that we can format and we can clear and we can insert new cells. So there's different options, and again we can use formulas. You'll be able to see it and you'll be able to understand a little bit more about what some of these options are for you. And underneath that we have the name box, which shows you which cell we are currently selecting. So if we hover over that, we can see it comes up as the name box, and whenever I change cell, just clicking into this section here, which is the main section or the grid, then you can see that that tells us where that is currently. And here we have what is called the formula bar. So this big long bar here is the formula bar, and this is where you're going to see all the different formulas as we go through, inserted into this part here. So what you can do if you don't like the look of this is you can just double click within the particular tab that you have highlighted, and you can see that that will go away, and double click back onto it and that will show you it come back up. There's also the options here down in this little arrow here, so you can select it how you want, and again you can hide these up here if you want to do. If you don't want to show the quick access toolbars or anything like that, then you can kind of format it and customize it however you want and just make it look as whatever way you want. Now that we've understood some of the tabs and the ribbon itself, we're just going to look at how we can quickly customize this quick access toolbar up here and the different options that we have within that. Within this, then we were looking at it earlier, we can click into this little section here and we can click on more commands. So one thing that we're going to look at within this now is how we can quickly print something, or just using that as an example. As if we wanted to print something in a minute, we'd have to go to File, and then we can go down to Print. We can see that we have it here, but if we were to print it to say, print it to a PDF, and then click Print, okay, then that's the section that we'd have to work on. But what we can do with the quick access toolbar is we can go here, and as we mentioned, we can go to this here, and we have the popular commands and we have all the default ones here. So working down then, what we're going to look for is the quick print, and we can click OK, and we can see that within this now it gives us the quick print option, and we're just going to make sure that we have that little icon up at the top here. And once we have that icon now, what we can do is click onto the icon and it will do exactly the same thing as it did before. Okay, rather than having to go through the whole kind of file and print thing, now all we have to do is just click that. So if we just put in a little bit of text, say for instance, when I can spell, so what we can do now is when we click on the quick print, we can see that it automatically goes through and it'd send that to our printer for us. So obviously we've not got a printer installed or anything like that at the moment, which is absolutely fine, but you can see how that would just work and it goes straight through for you, not having to worry about kind of messing about and going through different settings and things like that. So you can see on mine that we have up here, we have the ascending and descending. So rather than kind of having to go through the whole kind of data thing and then clicking on that, if we just had it on the home tab rather than kind of two tabs and then try to find it, we can see here that we already have that highlighted. So we can just quickly go up, and if that's something that you use a lot like myself, where you want to find kind of the highest or lowest data, then these are just nice and easy to have up at the top here. And rather than try to find them within different tabs and change it around, then at least you have that option there just quickly to be able to grab hold of them and do the actions that you need to do. So now we're going to be looking at some more within the Excel interface and what we need to understand about this. So we spoke briefly about the ribbon up here and the different tabs that we have. We have the formula bar and we have the name box over here. Underneath that then we have the actual Excel workbook itself, which you can see where all these grids are. Okay, so this represents all this area that we have here. Down at the bottom we can see that we have some extra things here. So we can see that we have sheet 1 that we're on, so that's the tab, and then we have this little add button here which will add a new sheet, but again we're going to cover that as we come along. You might also see some different stuff down here, so we can kind of see all these different stuff, and again don't worry about this too much, as this kind of just gives you an idea of what Excel can be doing at certain times, and it'll update and it'll kind of show you different stuff. Along to the right here we have different settings, And what you can do is we can right click onto that and we can add different things. So we can't see any of these now, but we can see that we've got all these different things selected, and these will come into play a little bit further on. It has your views when you go to this side, so we can see that we're currently in normal view. We then have a page layout view, and we also have this page break view. So we'll just go back to normal view now, and what we can see is if we click into this cell here, and then we can use this, so you can either click to zoom in individually like so, or we can click to zoom out, or if you want you can also grab the little cursor thing and just zoom in and out. And what this will do as well is just a little tip for you, so wherever your cursor is or whichever cell you've got selected, it'll automatically zoom into that cell that you have selected. So if we select a cell down here for instance and we zoom in, you can see that it automatically adjusted that there so that we have that cell kind of in view all the time as well. So we just put that back to normal view there, and we'll just select the cell up here. And for instance, say we put in some numbers here, just kind of simply 1, 2, 3, 4, and we highlight them cells. We can see down here that some information starts to show up. So we can see the average is 2.5, the count is 4, the numerical count is 4, because there's 4 different numbers. The min is 1, the max is 4, and the sum is 10. So as we mentioned, you can right click on them and you can either select or deselect them. So if we deselect the average, say, and that'll drop off, and you can add that back on and select that. So just one there, if you have anything that you want to kind of add or remove within that, then that's how you can do it, and you can build up some useful little information here without having to do too much digging around, because if you just select the data within Excel, then it's going to bring it up here sometimes for you depending on what you're looking for. Understanding the Excel workbook and how it's kind of made up is one of the main things that you'll need to understand within Excel, and it's really pretty simple to be fair. It's made in a way that's got a grid, and within the grid you can reference specific things. So we can see here, just looking down at the bottom, that we're in sheet 1. So we have the tab, and up at the top here you have the workbook. Okay, so this is what's called a sheet. This whole Excel file here is what's called the workbook. So we can see that we're currently saved as book 1, and we have sheet 1. So within book 1, sheet 1, what we also have is we have these columns up at the top here. So everything from A to Z and further on, okay, these are always called columns, and everything down the side here are called rows. So when someone's referencing, they might say, oh, it's in column G and row 5. Okay, so when we click into that, what we can also do is a nice easy way is looking over here. We can see the name box, and this name box is going to show you where you have your selected cell at any one time. So for us, if we were looking for G5, let's say we can see that it turns a slightly different color for G, gives it a little bit of an underline with a green color, and the same for the 5 row over here. We also get it up in the name box over here. So say for instance someone says that something is on sheet 2, what we can do is we can come down here and we have the new sheet button here. So we can click onto sheet 2, and what this does is it just creates an entirely new sheet within this Excel workbook. And again, we can enter all the data here and it'll be completely different to what is on sheet 1. So we can add a third sheet, for instance, there, and we can keep doing this and doing this and doing this up to a point. And I believe it's kind of dependent on your computer on how many of these you can add and what you can actually build out within this. But what happens if we say we right click onto this and we just delete one of these sheets here? Now, when we add a new sheet at this point, it's not going to add a sheet 2, because even though there isn't a sheet 2 there, it's just going to add in the next available sheet. So because Excel knows that we've already had a sheet 2 and a sheet 3, it'll just add a sheet 4. But don't worry too much about that by now. We're just looking at kind of referencing these bits here. So you have your columns up here and you have your rows. And like I say, you have something that you can kind of reference here. And even if you were to select multiple rows or columns or anything like that, it will only show the original selection that you have in the name box up here. So make sure that you have that kind of selected and you know exactly where that is. Understanding how to save something in Excel is going to be really important, as you don't want to be doing all your work and then get to a point that you have lost all your work or something happens to your computer or whatever and it's just gone. So you want to be able to understand the differences of saving and how to do this really effectively and easy. So we can see that up here we have the quick access toolbar, which has a save. But what we're going to do is we're going to take a look here in the file. So we have a save and we have a save as. So you might be asking what's the difference between these. So a save is something that you've got already pre-existing work, you just want to override it. And a save as is if you're going to save something new for the first time, then this is the option that you want to be looking at here, as it won't have anything to overwrite. So at this point, because I've not saved the document, it won't have anything to override, or it won't do anything. So irrespective of whether I click save or save as, it'll just take me to the same point at this one. So what we can do now is we can click save as, and when we open save as, we can see that we have our OneDrives, we have this PC, and what we can do here is we can browse, and we can save this to different locations as well. So we're clicking on browse now, and what we're going to do is it brings up our kind of subdirectory here where we can save it, and what we can do is we can select where we want to save it. So for me, I'm just going to save it onto my desktop, and we can see that we have book 1. So I'm just going to change this here onto course. You can see that I left the .xlsx, but you don't have to leave that. Like I say, it'll automatically put that in for you once you save it, but that is basically just the file type. So you might see XLSX there, or you might see XLS there, which is an older file type. But if you look at this file type underneath here and we click on this, then you can see all the different file types that we have. And as I just mentioned there, you might have the XLS, which is an older version of Excel, or we can see all these other ones here for different versions. So we have, you know, if you want to save it as a CSV file, or you want to save it as a text file or anything like that, then this is where you would do it. If you want to save it as a PDF, we have the option there of saving as a PDF. But for now, we're just going to stick to the XLSX version, and we're going to save that as a course. So if we click the save on that point, then we can see up here that the book 1 has changed. So we don't have that book 1 anymore, and that's changed for us. And what we can do now is if we just click save up here on the quick access toolbar, or if we click save here, then that will save it as the same version, and it just overwrites that in the same location for where we were before. And we don't have to do anything more with it from there. So we just looked at how we can save within Excel, and now we need to know how we can open existing workbooks. So what we need to do to open an existing workbook within Excel, or a previous workbook, is to click on the file up here, and when we go down we can see the open here, and clicking onto open, then we can see all of our kind of previous workbooks that we've done. We can see the course there, and we can see some other work that I've previously done on this computer. If you don't see any of it in kind of previous workbooks or anything like that, what we can do is we can go into browse, and using the browse feature, then you're able to look through your computer and find which kind of part of your computer it's on. So say for instance, we're going to look at this one, so we want to open the course again. We can click open, and what that'll do is that'll open that particular file that we've chosen. So if there's anything that you've got that you can open up, then that's how to do it. It's just nice and simple. So clicking onto the open there, and then working through, finding it either through browse, or if you've got any kind of current ones, then it's nice and easy to there. So now we've understood some of the basics within Excel, what we're going to look at is how we can start to enter labels. So a label is something that can refer to text within Excel. And what we're going to look at is just building a simple kind of budget for ourselves. And obviously this can be personalized for you, or you can follow along and do the numbers exactly as I am. And what we're going to look at first is where a lot of people generally put in information is the cell A1 up here. So we know from previous examples that we have the name box up here, so we can see that we have cell A1, and what we can put in here is, when I can spell it, is the monthly budget like so. And entering the monthly budget up here in cell A1, okay, we can then click off of it, and we can see that this cell here is overlapped a little bit into the B1, but we don't worry about that too much. And what we can pop underneath that is say bills. And at this point here, this is where you can enter either what I've entered, or you can enter whatever you want, and you can go from there. So just thinking about all the different things that you would pay within a month towards your bills and what they might be. So we can start out with rent, we can do electric, we can do water, we can say gas, we can say food, and spell food right, might help a little bit. And you know, we could say treats. So if we just say treats like that, and then we can add a total. So just thinking about the different things that you'd want within a budget. So you have the title here, for instance, and then underneath that you have all the different things that you would pay within a month, and obviously you would eventually want to know what the total of that is. And we don't just want to do this for 1 month, we want to do this for numerous months. So we say January, and when you're entering the name in January, there's different ways that you can do this. So we can enter January like so, or you can enter Feb, and kind of moving like that. So I'm not very good with spelling, and it's one of my massive downfalls. So for me, I normally just use these kind of abbreviated ones, just using the 3 letters. So Jan, Feb, March, like so. And again, then what we're going to do is we're just going to add on a total at the end, because what we want to know at this, when you're looking at this, so you have the column headers here, or the column labels, and you have the row labels down here. But obviously we want to know what the total would be for the whole of January, and we would also want to know what the total would be for the rent across them 3 months. So we can see that we have that there. And if we want to just make this a little bit easier for ourselves, then we can use this zoom button here, and we'll just zoom in and we'll make this a little bit bigger. So zooming in like that, then we've just kind of moved in and made this better. And you can see that eventually we're going to start to build this all out. Okay, I'm going to input all these different numbers within this. So using this, then what we can see is that we've used the text within Excel, okay, and we've typed this in. And we know that this has gone into Excel as text, as everything is left aligned. So we can see here, especially within these shorter ones here, that the text has moved over to the left hand side of the box, and it's left this white space here over on the right hand side. So by doing that, we know that this has been identified by Excel as text. So previously then we've looked at how we can use labels, and that means the text within Excel. But now what we need to do is we need to start inputting some of the values within these as the numerical values. And this is where the basis of Excel is in terms of numbers and calculating things. So this is probably the bit that you want to understand and know. So for me, say rent is 800, we have electric at say 60, we have water, say 30, gas, say 50, food, maybe 150, and treats there, we could put in potentially at 30. And what we have there is kind of all the different numbers that we might have within a month. So again, we'll keep rent at 800, we'll have the electric at say 65, we'll have the water at 30, the gas at 50, the food at 160, and the treats will drop them down a little bit because we spent a little bit more on food. We'll keep the rent at 800, electric will drop that down a little bit, water at 30, gas at 50, food will put back to 150, and treats will put at 25. So we can see here then that we've inserted the numbers, and what you can see pretty quickly is how Excel puts these and where it actually puts these within the specific cell. So although we haven't told Excel whether this is kind of text or numbers, we've just inputted data, it automatically knows that this is text and obviously goes to the left aligned, and this is a numerical value, and this can go over to the right hand side. We know that with bills, they're not always going to be just exact numbers like this. So for example, 800 or anything like that. So if for any of your bills, you need to put in anything more, or you can add decimal places, we can go up to the home tab up here, and we can see that we have this here. And within this here, we can increase the decimal place and we can decrease the decimal place. So what we can do is just click on that twice, for example, there, and we can see that that just puts in the decimal place with 2 points after it. And again, we can just decrease that down just by clicking twice, and we can see that that reverts it back to its original. What is the benefit of having this over on the right hand side, obviously, other than being able to tell that this is text and this is numerical values? Well, it just makes it look a little bit neater and it's easier to understand. So if we were to just change the alignment of this, you can see that it looks a little bit kind of everywhere, like as it sticks out at that point, and it makes it kind of not as easy to understand because everything's just straight down in one column, where if everything's over there, then you can kind of see, right, cool, that's my header, and then you have all your numbers underneath there. Obviously, it leaves quite a lot of white space as well within this, and by adding the white space, it just makes it easy for your eyes to understand and be able to see the data that's presented in front of you. So if we had this, for example, and then we had it over to the right, and say we increase 2 decimal places, you can see there straight away, it starts to add lots of different things, and it starts to add it so that it takes up the white space within this kind of graph, within this table, and it makes it a little bit harder to view it, and you kind of have to stop a little bit more. So it just makes it easy just to clean your data as much as you can, and just make it simple for everybody to understand it and look at it quickly, so that when you're kind of doing it, you're not having to mess about and you can kind of see where things are. So we've looked at labels within Excel, and we've also looked at numerical values. So what we can look at now is how we can insert dates. And we obviously have our months up here, so we have January, February, March. But what we can do is we can double click into the cell where we have the January here, and we can put the dash, and we have the year 2024, so we can put 24 like so, and we can press enter. And if we were to double click into that now, we can see up here in the formula bar that it's actually changed it to the date 1st of the 1st, 2024. And if we press escape, we'll come back out of that. So say for instance that I want to undo that. And what we can do now is if we put into this and we put 2024, like so, we can see that it still abbreviates it down for us and it makes that a 24. But it can become a little bit confusing at this point because you don't know whether it's referring to, say, the 24th of January, or is it referring to kind of the year that it is. And obviously clicking into the cell and having a look up here, we can see that it's referring to the 1st of the 1st, 2024. But again, we're coming back to that point where you want to make your data as clear and as easy to read as possible. And having it like that isn't as clear and easy as possible. So understanding that point, that we need to change the format of how this data is shown to us. And we can see down here, so if we click into rent and we can come up here, we can see that Excel automatically looks at this as a number. Whereas if we click up here, it's changed this to a custom. Whereas for the other dates, we can see it's a general. So a general is looking at it as text. And up here, we can see that we have a custom. So if we want to change that then, and we want to have it as January, then obviously 2024, what we can do is click here and we can start to see all the different versions that Excel can potentially change that. So we can see that we have the long date, which is the 1st January 2024, and we have the first date like so. But that's not what we want. We just want it to say Jan and then dash, but rather than just 24, we want to say 2024. So we can come down here and we can look at these more number formats. And we can see that up here we have a section called date. And click into the date, then we can have a look and we can scroll down and we can see if we can see what we're looking for. So seeing nothing there. So you can see that you've got your days, your months and years at the end there. And it might be formatted a little bit differently in Excel depending where you're from. But within our search here, we don't have exactly what we're looking for. So we can just come down here, and down here it's going to give you a few more examples of things that it has. So again, it has day, day, month, month, year, year, but that's not what we're after. Okay, we're after kind of the month and then the year. So we can go into this type box here and we can just press backspace, and the D stands for day. So if you were to insert a D, like so, you can see that it will give you the sample up here of what you're going to get back. So we have the 0, 1. Or if we just insert the 1D, you just get 1. And because we're not wanting D, we'll delete that out. So months obviously stands for months. So we'll press 1M and we can see that it's going to return a number for us there. If we return 2 M's, then we have the kind of 0, 1 part. 3 M's gives us the abbreviated part that we want. And 4 M's would give us the full month as it is there. So if we just delete that down, because all we're wanting now is the 3 M's, so we get the Jan, which is the shortened version. We can press this little dash bit there, and then we can enter the Y, which will be for year. So again, this follows a similar suit, so we can enter Y once, which gives us the abbreviated version at 24. Okay, and it's 3 Y's would just give you 2024, but I always like to just put the 4 in there, just to 100% make sure. So we can see that's exactly what we're wanting there, the Jan 2024. And you can see that by clicking into that there, then it's actually formatted our date for us, and we now have Jan 2024. So what we can do now then is if we go into February as well, and we press the -24, then -24 for the March. Okay, we're going to just collect all of them up in one group, like so, and then we'll just go down and we'll click more values. So we know that ours doesn't exist, so we have 3 months and 2 Y's. So we can just amend that one there, just adding in the extra 2 Y's. looking at our sample up here, we can see that we get what we want, and we can click OK. And now you can see that that's formatted all the different dates that we have there to how we want it. And it looks a lot clearer in the sense that obviously people can look at that and they know, all right, cool, that's January 2024, February 2024, and March 2024. So that's just one way that we can look and format in dates. But like I say, for a lot of the dates and things, you might be able to just amend it and have it as a short date or a long date, depending on what it is you're kind of particularly looking for. So just before we start to work into formulas, then we're just going to have another look at cell referencing just to kind of understand little bits, because what we have kind of covered is obviously if you're clicking into a cell there, we understand that we have the B selected by the underline and it goes a little bit kind of darker grey, and we have the 4 selected and again by the grey and the green there. We also get the name box up here that will tell us where we are. But for instance, if we click into this and we know that for January, we know January's bills come from B4 and they go down to B8. But when we select that and we kind of click and hold as we drag that down, we can see that our selection here only stays on B4 and it doesn't move to the whole of the B8 that we have selected. And this is because it only ever shows you what is the selected cell. Okay, so it'll always stick with that B4 part there and it won't move from there. And same again if we were to click into C4 and down to C8, again it'll only ever work on the active cell that it has. But what we can do within Excel, and some of that will come kind of better for you later on when you're working with graphs and things like that, obviously you're going to be selecting the data that you want to use in your graphs. And what we can do is something called non-continuous data. So what this basically means is, say that somebody wants to understand how all the rent for all the months has come through and the electric, so we can select that like so. But then they also want to know how your food has changed over the month. Well, what you can do is you can hold down the control button at this point and you can also select that food kind of section there. And by moving it over, holding control there, we can see that it's highlighted a non-continuous part of the cells. We have all the rents, the electric selected. Obviously, we've missed the water, we've missed the gas, and then we've gone into the food. And we can do this with single cells as well. So say we have like the rent at 800 there, and we have the gas, we can hold the control and click down onto the 50. And what the beauty of this is, it quickly adds up. If you look down in the bottom right hand corner here for you, 2 different numbers. So if you don't want to be kind of doing loads of calculations and kind of messing about for whatever reason, you can say, you know, all right, cool, I've got them 2 selected, that's cool. But then if for whatever reason the 2 cells that you quickly want to look at aren't connected, then you can just click on that, press control and click on the selected cell that you want to do. And like I say, it also works on a range of cells as well, so that you can select them and just kind of make this selection for what you want, so that when it comes to later on in terms of adding graphs and stuff, then it's going to make your life a lot easier just understanding and knowing that control button there for you. So now we're going to start looking at basic formulas within Excel, and we know that by kind of this here, when we select all these different cells here, we know that we get this sum down here and it kind of adds everything up for us. But we want to make this so that it's easily available and that when people are looking at this, they can instantly see it. As every time when they're opening up the spreadsheet, you don't want them to be selecting everything or clicking on multiple cells and kind of working it all out manually. You want it to be there for them as they look at it straight away. So whenever you're entering formulas or you want to start to work anything out, the first button that you need to be pressing is the equals sign. And what we can do there is some basic maths within Excel. So we can say the 800 plus the 60 plus the 30 plus the 50 plus the 150 plus 30. And you can see just by doing that, it becomes kind of clunky. And, you know, just even having a look at myself there, we have a few kind of typing errors and stuff like that. But this is like the simplest way to do things in Excel in terms of like, this is the base point for everything that you will build on. Okay, so everything always starts when you try to work stuff out and do stuff in Excel with the equal sign. So we can see here that we have the 800, we have the 60, the 30, the 50, the 150, and the 30. And we can press enter at that. And as we did before, when we selected it all, we can see that we have that 1120 selected down here. But the problem with doing it this way is, say we change that treats to 50. Nothing happens down here. And you can see that nothing happened because it didn't move. But when we select the cells again, we know down here that it should be coming out at 1140. But we're only getting the 1120 down here. So working things out like that, as you've seen at the beginning there, is like the basics of understanding things within Excel, but it's also the clunkiest way because you can make typing errors. And obviously if anything changes within the data that you have there, it's also not going to move along as well. So what we can do now is something called cell referencing. So deleting that cell out, then we can press the equals, and going back to the cell referencing then, so something that we know is important, we know that all these sums start at B4. So what we can enter here is the B4, like so. And you can see as we've entered the B4, Excel gives us this nice little color box here to show us where we've actually selected in terms of the cell and what it is that we're looking at. And then what we can do is we can add B5, add B6, add B7, add B8. And by doing it that way, you can see that again, it's added all these different little color boxes down here. And I'm actually referencing the cell itself rather than a specific number. So I'm saying I want it to add that cell plus that cell plus that cell plus that cell plus that cell. Okay. And when we press enter now, okay, that should add everything up that we have. And I just forgot to add in B9. So we'll add in the B9 there at the end. And as we can see, it's added up all these different cells that we have here. So what we can do now is we can press the enter button, and we have that 1140, which we had down here, which is great news. So we'll change the treats back to 30 now. And what's the difference in the total that we have now compared to what we had before? So once I've entered the 30, then we can press the enter, and we can see that the number there has automatically changed for us. And it's all calculated that based on the references, or sorry, within the values in the cells. Okay, so it's not us like hard coding in the numbers. It's us now actually just inputting the cell and saying, I want you to add this cell and this cell and this cell rather than this specific number. And this doesn't just work in columns. So we can see that that's adding up that column there. But what about if we want to add up rows? Okay, so this works in exactly the same way as what I did before. So we can always start out with the equal sign here. And we know that we start out in cell B4. So we have the rent here in B4, but if we wanted to add up the rent again here, okay, within the C4, then what we need to do is press the plus sign, and rather than kind of dropping down the rows now, what we need to do is move across the columns. So we're just going to press in C4 and then plus D4. And again, what's the beautiful thing within Excel is that it shows you exactly where you're working with. Okay, so it gives you nice little colors as you're working along, and you can see all the different things that you're adding up. And again, because we've added the actual cell references now, rather than just hard coding in the numbers, we'll press enter and say we change a number. What's going to happen is that's going to actually change along with us, and then that'll make it nice and easy for us if we have anything to amend. So now that we have this understanding of how we can get these formulas, and obviously using the equals and the B4, B5, B6, B7, B8 and B9 that we have here, we can start to look at and understand what we call relative and absolute formulas. And with this, we can take this as an example here. So if we were using this as a relative formula, one thing that we can do is we can click onto the cell and we can press Control and C, or you can right click into it, whichever way you want, and copy. But using the shortcuts is always easier. So use the Control and C, and then click into the cell where you want the formula to go and press Control and V. You're copying this formula here from B10 over into C10. So once you've done this, then we can double click into C10 and we can see that this has changed all the values. So we have the C4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9. And we can also see that Excel's colored it in for us nice and neatly there, so we can see where it's working on. And the reason this works is it's a relative formula. So what that means is it looks at what is being copied from it. So we can see that we're asking it to work 6 up. So when we take this, for example, it's going to look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So then we copied that over and it does exactly the same again, and it copies up 6 rows for us there. So exactly the same as if we were to do it here. We can copy it over again and it's going to do exactly the same, copying up 6 rows. So this works again where, say we were to click over here on a cell, we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. We're going to take this here and we're going to copy it and we're going to pop it into there, and then we can add it up and we see that we get 21. And that won't matter either if we just take that and we just make it into 6 ones, okay, or anything that we want to do basically. It looks at the formula and just copies the same thing. Okay, so if we were to add a 1 at the top, say, then it isn't going to add that because the formula only ever works from what it was copied from. So we can see that we have the 6 up there. And this works as well when we're working with horizontal. So we can see here that we have the 800s copied over, so we can copy that and we can just press Control and V to put that back down. So again, we can press Control and C and Control and V, and we can just Control and V this all the way down because it follows the same pattern there where we have this kind of 3 across from there. So if we double click into it, we can see that all it's done is it's just changed all these formulas over for us, and it works exactly the same, copying 3 over, the exact same as this one worked when it were counting 6 up. Understanding that, then we're going to start to look at absolute formulas now. So if we want to work out a percentage, say for example in this one, what we're going to do is we're going to start out the formula exactly as we would do normally. So we can press the equals, and we want to work out how much of this rent equals our total, so as a percentage. So we can take the partial, divide it by the full, and there we can see that we get a fractional percentage. So we get the 0.71, which is a lot of what we actually kind of have put in here. What we can do now is say we want to take this, so we press the Control and C, and as we did before, we want to move this down, we press Control V. We can see that we get this error here. And the reason that we get this error here is it's dividing by 0. So if we were to double click into it, we can see that we've got E5, which is this one, divided by E11. And as we can see, we have nothing in E11 at all. So that's why we're getting the div 0 error. And the reason for this is that the cells are obviously just following the same pattern as we were up here. So we have kind of 1 over and then working down to the E10, but we don't have E10 locked in. So it's just moving down 1 cell as it moves down. So understanding that, then what we can do is we can go back into this here, and when we work on this, we want this to be a relative, because as we move down, so as we move down the different cells, what we're going to need is we need that to reference 1 to the left. So we need equals E4, E5, E6, E7, and so on and so on. But we always want to keep this E10 the same. So what we can do is go here and we can put in some dollar signs, and we put the dollar signs in between the column. So we know that the column is always going to be E, and we always know that the cell that we want is going to be 10. So we can press enter on that. Now, when we press the Control and C and we press Control and V, we can see that we don't get that div error anymore. And the reason because we don't get the div error is we have the equals, and we can see that this relative reference here has moved down 1, which is great. So we have the E5, but the absolute reference that we have up here has stayed exactly where it is at cell E10 because we've put in these dollar signs here. So just a quick thing as well, when you're working with the dollar signs, if you don't want to do that, you can also press the F4 key, and pressing the F4, and you can cycle through all the different ways that we do it. So this one you could move the column, but you would lock in row 10. This one, you would always stay in column E, but you would move from row 10, so you can move it up or down. And then obviously we have the back to normal. But for us, for this example, we want to reference that exact cell within that exact column and row. So that's why we have the dollar sign in front of both the E and the 10. So taking this then, and we can just Control and C and Control and V this all the way down now, because what this is going to do is just stay exactly as it is. And even at the bottom here, so when this is right next to it, okay, we can see that we have E10 divided by E10, which gets us that 1, okay, to show us complete. But we can see here that even though this has moved, we have that part there that has always stayed the same for us. So hopefully that makes a little bit more sense in terms of absolute and kind of variable references. And if you have any questions, then obviously don't forget to ask and we can get them answered for you. So now we're going to look at and understand the structure of a function. So we've kind of started this process off already where we have the equals and then we have all these kind of numbers following it on. But what we're going to look at now is how this is actually kind of all brought together and what this is. What we're going to do is when we have this, then we're going to start to understand that we have the equals that we have there, and we have the B4, B5, but you don't want to be inserting that every time. So what we can do is there's a couple of ways that we can do this. When you know that you're going to be adding up this, for example, you have up in the formulas bar, you have the insert function, or just next to the formula kind of bar here, we have the insert function part. And what you can also do is if you press equals, that also starts the process off. So if you already understand the process that you're doing, then you can kind of work through it. But just as a basis to start out with, if you click into the box where you want to go and click either the insert function or the function, we can open that there. And we can see that here it gives us the opportunity to kind of search for any functions that we might have, or it gives us a load of kind of defined functions. And Excel's got kind of hundreds of these different things that help you do loads of different things depending on what it is that you're wanting to return in terms of your values and the information that you want to get out of your spreadsheets. So for us, we want to use the sum function because we want to add up these 6 rows here. So we can double click into the sum. And what this does is, depending on your version of Excel, this is going to automatically give you a number. Now, we can see that this number is slightly different to how we've done before. And with this, what we've always done is we've put the B4 plus B5 plus B6 and so on and so on, where this has the colon in the middle there. And what that does is it says that it's a range of cells. So rather than having to type in everything individually, it gives you a range from B4 all the way down to B9. So if we take that out, and we can just start it out as we want to go on. So we can see here as well, it gives us a little total as we're going along. And what this does at the bottom here is it tells you what this formula does as well. So we can see that the equals, and then the formula name, and then the argument that we have within this. Okay, so they're the 3 parts of the formula. So we have the equal, the formula itself, and then the arguments that that formula needs. But if you press the FX because you're not quite sure of what to do or anything like that, the beauty of this part here is that it will kind of direct you, and it will tell you what to do and what to put in each part. So we can see that the sum adds all the numbers in a range of cells. And then number 1, so what is the argument that you're wanting to put in number 1? So you can add up to 255 different numbers, okay? And it's going to add all them up for us basically. So we can put in the B4, and then we can put in and the B9 like so. And we can see that this has worked because it's got the 800, the 60, the 30, the 50, 150, and the 30 at the end there. If you're unsure at any point, then you can always just click onto the help on this function part, and it'll take you to a web page that will open up Excel kind of Q&As within Microsoft, and it'll give you a little bit of an understanding, and it'll explain it. It'll give you a few demos, and it'll kind of explain what you need to do to make that formula work the best that it can do. So we also have the results that we have down here, and we can press the OK button. So once we have that OK button, then because we have the sum equals B4 to B9, what we can do is we can press the Control and C, and we can pop this over, and we can just use the Control and V as we were doing before, and that's just going to move it over as it needs to do. So we can see that we've got, rather than all the different numbers now, because we've used it as a relative, we know that we're only going to be adding up 6 above. So we have the equals, we have the formula itself, and then we have a range rather than putting each individual cell. So using that colon there, we can see that we've just added it in, and it just makes it a little bit easier rather than having to type in everything individually. As you can see as well, rather than giving you all the different colors within a specific cell, because we've referenced each cell individually, you can see that the column itself has just gone blue, because let's say we've referenced a range of cells rather than a specific cell. So hopefully now we've got a little bit of an understanding of functions, and we can see here that we have the sum function. But what we're going to do is we're just going to add little bits down here. We're going to put in min, max, and average. And I think they kind of speak for themselves with these ones in terms of the formulas and obviously what we're going to be looking for next within our data. And we can click into this, and as we did before, we want to be looking at the formulas, and we have all these little books here. So these are all the different formulas that we have and what we can look for. So we can see down here there's quite a lot of different ones, and obviously each of these books has different ones. So you can find them as you go through, either having a look at the books, or if you're not sure, like I say, we can insert functions and they can work from there. We have the maths and trig one here, and we had the sum one that we had earlier in this one. So we have all the different sums. So we have the sum ifs, and the sum products, and kind of a few others down here. But what we're looking for now is the min. And if we go up here, then we can't find the min within that. So it's not within the m's, but we do have the more functions here. So we have quite a few different ones here again. So we can look at statistical and we can go across. Coming down here. There we are. We can see the min there. And what we can do is we can click into the min. It gives you a little bit of a kind of idea of what it's saying there. So it returns the smallest number in the set of values. Okay, and it ignores text. So clicking into that then, we can see here it's brought up that argument again in terms of, you know, when we click the insert functions, and then we get this box here and we can see what it's trying to add up here. But it's not quite right. Obviously, it's added up different cells to what we would want it to do, because we don't want it to be adding up the B11, and we definitely don't want to round up the total as well, because that's just going to skew the numbers for later on if we were adding the max or anything like that as well. So we can see within the formula here that we have the B4 cell. Okay, so we have the B4 here, but we need it to go down to the B9. So that's the furthest we can go. So again, we can put in the colon and we can type in the B9 at that point. And with this then we can see that we have all the numbers that we would need, and we can see the result of that. And we know that 30 is going to be the lowest one, because we have 30 for water and we have 30 for trees. And where we have kind of small data like this, it's ideal that we can kind of check our formulas and just see where we are. Because sometimes when you're working on bigger formulas, obviously if they go on off of the page and things like that, then it's going to make it a little bit more complicated for you. So we can click OK at that point, and we can see that that returns that 30 for us, which is great. Okay, so we have that, and what we can do now then is the exact opposite in terms of the max. So we can click into that, and we can go more functions, we can go statistical, and what we're going to go down is we're going to scroll down nice and slowly now. And there we have it, the max. And again, just hovering over that there gives us a little bit of an idea of what it does. Okay, so it's going to return the largest value. So we can click into that, and we can see now that it's just gone for B12, because it's just working one up. So it's not quite got what we're looking for. So we can just delete that out there. And we can type in the B4, because we know that's where we want to start. We type in the colon, and we know that we want to go down to the B9. So we can type in B9 there. So once we've got the B9, then we can see that the highest number is 800, which we know to be right, as that's the highest percentage that we have, okay, which is rent. So we can click the OK there, and that returns the max value for us there. And as we did before, and understanding obviously the relative values that we have and absolute values, we know that if we move this across now, it's going to be a relative value because it's a B4 to B9. So we can just copy and paste that over. And as we copy and paste that over, we get the lowest values within this, because these are relative values and we haven't kind of made them absolute values in terms of where they go or fixed in any way. So the nice thing is just copy over, and as we can see, it just returns that result for us nice and quickly, as our total will be 2,400 for that one. Obviously all of our rents added up through there, but we know that every month our rent is our most expensive. We can see that we've got the 30, we can see we've got the 20 there for treats, and again we have the 25 for treats there for the min. So have a quick play with that on yours. I don't know if you're following along in terms of my exact numbers or if you're making your own as we go along, but just have a quick play with that one then, see where you end up, and then we'll jump into the next one. So moving on to the next function then, as you can probably guess, this is the average function, and it works very similar in terms of all the other functions, or it works exactly the same in all the other functions, where, you know, you have your equal sign, you have your formula, and then you have the arguments within it. So it's exactly the same. So we can click in the box where we have the average. We're going to come up to the formulas tab up here. We're going to click more functions. We're going to go statistical, and we can see it up at the very top there. So coming into here then, what it's done now is it's automatically thinking that we want to just do the average of the two that we have here, okay, above it, which is fine, because we know at this point now what we need to do is we just need to change this around, and then we need to go B4 to B9, and we can see that we have the results here. Okay, so what we can do is we can just click the OK button, and that'll give us our results there. So if we click into it then, just looking at the where this is built out, it's exactly the same as all the others. So we have the equal sign, we have the formula itself, and then we have the argument here. And once you start to learn this, if you look at this little bit here underneath, you can see that this is all kind of the formulas as well and how this works. So we can see that we have the formula itself here, and then what it does is it actually shows you the arguments here underneath. So we definitely need a number 1, okay, because we need to know what it is. But that doesn't have to just be a number, that could be a range at the same time. And then these in the brackets, in the square brackets here that you can see, okay, these are conditional in terms of you don't always have to add them, but if you want to add more, then we can do. So say for instance we're in the average there, you can see that the number 1 has gone a little bit darker than what that is. But if we were to put a comma, okay, you can see that now it's looking for the second argument. So what would be the second range, or what would be the second number that we would add? Okay, so if you want to start doing your formulas, once you learn a little bit more about them, then that's the way that you can add them in. But if you're doing them within the FX part there, that would simply be, there we go. So we want the average one. For this one, we know we need B4 to B9. In this part here, we can see that when we click into number 2, it opens up a number 3 and so on. So rather than kind of typing it directly in here, this just kind of breaks it down for you and makes it a little bit easier sometimes to see. So if we were to do a second number, say we could click on, say, that one, and that'd add that into that mix there, and we can kind of say, right, so we want all the B4 to B9 and also C4 to work out what is the average of all them cells that we have there. But we'll just cancel that for now because we know that we don't want to be working on C4, and because we have a relative reference for the average here, what we can do is we can just copy this across here, and that'll give us that relative reference working up there. So double clicking into that, we can see that it's given us the E4 to E9 because it's nicely highlighted it there for us, showing us exactly what we want an average of. So we've worked out quite a few different things now with the min, max and average, and we're just going to zoom out a little bit now, and the one that we're going to work on now is the count function. And what this does is it does exactly what it says. It counts how many cells that you have within a specific range. And the reason this works, or the reason this is a formula, is it just looks at numerical values, so it won't count any text and it won't count any blank values. So we can always see if we have the right amount of numbers within a specific row, just nice and easy. Obviously we know that if we select a specific range, then down here we have the numeric count, okay, of 6 by right clicking. But what we can do as a formula for this one, when we go to the more functions, statistical, okay, we're going to look for the count there, and we can see that we've got count, count A, count blank, count ifs, and quite a few other different ones. So we're just going to have a look at this one, and we're just going to type in our formula. So B8, oh, see, got it wrong there, to B9, and we can see that we have 6. So we know that that's right because we had the count function down here before, and we can just click OK on that. And just to show you what this one does then, so say we have, we get rid of that one there, and we just press that, so we can see that that's taken us down to 5. If we press Ctrl and Z, that'll take us back. Or even if we just change this to, say, some words within there, and again that drops it down because it doesn't count anything other than numbers. Okay, so we have 6 there, and it just worked kind of really nicely for us. And it just makes sure that when you're working with data, sometimes, again, if you have quite a lot of data that goes off of your screen and things like that, then it can be a handy little tool because you might drop out of data, or say something changes in terms of the way that something is formatted, then this will work for you in terms of being able to just say, oh, well, actually, this is kind of right because I have this many within this range, and this is how many I'm actually expecting to be working on. So if you have any questions about the count function, then don't forget to ask. But as we did before, we can just press Ctrl and C, and we can move that along, and that there is just going to kind of make sure that we have the right amount in there. So what we're going to look at now is the errors that we have within our spreadsheet, and we can see where the errors are showing up by these little green triangles that we have up in the corner here. And the reason that this is it's because Excel wants to be helpful to us, and it thinks that we're missing something out, because all it ever sees is kind of the text that we have down here and the numbers that we have here. And it wants to be helpful to us in terms of saying why we're not doing this or what's going on here. And with this one, so if we click into this sum here, we can see that we have the formula of sum from B4 to B9. But what Excel is looking at is saying, well, hang on a minute, this date up here, which is a number as well, okay, that why we're not working on that as well. So when we click into our error here that we can see, we have, we can omit the adjacent cells, we can update the formula, we can get help, we can ignore it, we can edit it and kind of obviously check it and do some errors. But if we were to update it to include it, we can see that it's jumped up quite a lot there. And the reason that it's jumped up quite a lot there, if we double click into it, is it's included the date up there because it thinks that we need to add that as it's a number. So we can press the Control Z just to go back on that. And what we're going to do is we can click into the error that we have again, and we're just going to ignore that. And clicking ignore just gets rid of that there, so that when somebody looks at your Excel spreadsheet, they're not kind of being like, oh, why have you got errors within this? And you can do this for multiple ones, so just clicking and dragging across to select multiple ones. We can click into it and we're just going to ignore it. And exactly the same that we have down here, okay? So when we click into the min, okay, if we were to look at what this is kind of looking at for us, then we click into it and we can say, well, why is that not working? And again, you can see that that there has been changed. So from the B4, it's moved to the B3 because it thinks that we need to include that part there for the date up at the top. So we just come out of that and then we'll press the Control Z to get the error back. The max is clearly looking for thing again, and average and count are exactly the same. So what we can do is we can select all these cells in a one like so. We can go over to the error and we can just click ignore error because we know that what we're working out is right. Okay, and we can see that by double clicking into it, and we can see that where we get these blue little kind of boxes around the range, that's actually what we want to be working out. So just kind of flick through. If you have any errors, just have a look at them, see what it's actually asking you. And like I say, it sometimes is kind of that you made a mistake, but obviously for a lot of the time it's just Excel trying to be helpful and working out what is wrong and what is right for things. So what we're going to look at now is we're going to get rid of some of this work that we've done, and we're going to look at how we can automate this a little bit quicker than what we have been doing. So what we're going to do is we're just going to select the range that we have here, and we're just going to get rid of these values. And the reason that we're going to get rid of these values is we're going to look at something called the auto sum. And what this does is it starts to automate things a little bit quicker for us and starts to make things easier. So with this, we can click into the totals that we have within B10 here, and we can go to the formula tab, and using this auto sum here, we can click into that and we can see that rather than kind of having to go through and selecting all the different things, that it will give us this sum automatically. So it automatically knows that we want B4 to B9, and it's missed out the date there for us, which is great. So we can press the enter button there and we can see that we have the right amount there. Working on that again, then we can move over a cell again, just click into that. We can see that we have C4 to C9 and into the D column. Okay, so we're in D10. Again, we can click the auto sum feature and we have the D4 to D9, which is great. So we have all of these that we need along the bottom to start out with, okay? And you've seen there just quickly, it worked really well at moving across there. So we have the total here. So we have the total here that we need, and we're going to start working across these ones here. So we can, again, press the auto sum, and it knows because these are the numbers here. So it's not working on this one here, which is a text value, which we know because it's left aligned. Okay, so it's working on the numeric values that we have there for the sum, which is great. It's worked it out for us and moved it over. Again, we can work on that. We know we've got B5, D10. But here, now when we see this one, look at what it does here. So it's one thing that we just need to be careful of. And when you're doing the auto sum feature, just understand a little bit of where the errors might come from. So because we have two numbers above, Excel automatically thinks that that is what we're looking for. And we just need to kind of correct it a little bit in thinking where we're going to go. So we can just click and drag the right cells that we have, okay, but just be conscious that it might obviously if you have numbers above it, it might auto select them ones. So we can press the enter button. Again, we can go and press the auto sum, and we can see now that it's trying to work on the 3 above that we have there, but this isn't what we want. So we just need to select the range that we want, and we can just go through like so. And you can see that this is still a lot quicker than having to obviously individually put stuff in, but it's just one to be careful of, that obviously when you are inputting your data and you're kind of working on the auto sum feature, if you do have any numbers above, just make sure that it's kind of correct, and obviously double clicking into it once you've done it as well can kind of show you where it's selecting and where it's adding up. Okay, so just make sure that that's right for you and that everything's kind of as it should be. So what I want to show you now is just the power of shortcuts within Excel, and we previously worked on the auto sum feature up here, which started to speed us up a lot more, and we got all these different calculations from that nice and quick. But we're just going to select these again, and we can delete these out. Okay, and deleting these out, what we're going to work on now is using the auto sum, but I want to show you how good this could be when you understand some of the shortcuts and as you get faster. So we know that all of this wants to add up into the total there, to the total there, to the total there, okay, and obviously that to there. So when we have the blank space that follows around this, what we can do is we can click and drag, and we can select all of the area that we have like so. Once we have that, then what we can do is press the Alt and equals, and by pressing the Alt and equals, we can see at this point here that it's just auto calculated all of these different numbers for us. And just double clicking into these, then just to have a quick look, we can see that it's managed to get that right for the B4 to B9. And even over here, where we have these ones here, so we have the B7 to D7, because we've selected the area that we did, okay, it automatically knew that, all right, cool, I want to work that out, I want to work that, okay, and it worked right for us. So whereas we had the error before working it individually because it thought that we wanted to move up one, if we just use the shortcut key of Alt and equals on the Windows, okay, then it seems to have worked everything out right for us. And it just kind of adds it all up, makes it right, okay, and it just saves you a lot of time. So understanding shortcut keys is going to be a great way of speeding up your work that you have. So what we're going to look at now is how we can move and copy data within Excel. So if we have this information that we have, say for instance here, and we're not happy that everything starts in column A, or even if it's a specific cell, what we can do is we can click into the cell, and if you move to the side, you can see that you get these little kind of arrows in multi directions. So if you just move that to the side or wherever you move it to, you can see that you can click and drag it, and we can move it wherever we want within the spreadsheet. And this works exactly the same if you have a large or a bigger set of data. So we can select the data that we have here, and again we can move to the side, and we can see that we get that pointy 4 arrow thing again. And what we can do is just move that around, and we can see that we have that nice green kind of outline where we're working with stuff, so we know exactly where it's going to end up, and we can just move it back there. So we can press the Control and Z, we'll just pop it back there. So that's how we can just move it kind of easily within that thing. But another way of doing this is to press Control and X, and what you do is you get these little dotted lines that go around the kind of data that you have, and that's just showing you where you have selected and what you've cut for this instance. So what we can do is then press where we want it. So say we want to move it over to here, and we'll put it in H2. We can then press Control and V, okay, and that will move all of our data there. So it cuts it out of where it is there, sticks it onto your clipboard, ready for you to move, and then when you paste it using the Control and V, okay, that moves it wherever you're wanting it. So we can just press the Control and Control and Z, sorry, and we'll pop that back there. We can see that we have 2 sheets here as well. And say you've done this monthly budget here, what we can do is we can select the date that we have, and we can press Control and X, and we can move into sheet 2, and say we want to go for B2, we can press the Control and V, and that will move all of that data over there. And we can see that it's moved from the sheet 1, and we've moved it into sheet 2 now, okay? But say for instance you don't want to get rid of that data, you want to keep that data on sheet 1, but once you've kind of copied that data, that needs to stay there, but you also want to make a copy into sheet 2 up here. So what we can do with this is we can select the data that we have, and we can press Control and C at this point, okay? And when you press Control and C, again you're going to get these little lines kind of dotted that go around the information that you've selected. We can move into the sheet where we want in selecting the cell that we want. So we know that we want cell B2. And again, we're just going to paste that in. So we're going to press Ctrl and V. And we've moved that into that point there. So once we move that in then, okay, we can go back to this and we can see that we have the data there and we also have the data here. You might be asking when you move your data over here, then why has the percentages changed? So we can see that the percentage here is like 96, where we had the percentage here as the 0.71. Well, that comes back to the argument of the absolute and relative references. So we can see that it's F5, which is kept there because it always wants one to the left. Okay, and that's a relative reference. But the fixed one that we have is down onto E10. So if we were to change that there, so we just need to be conscious of where we're saving it. So we can save it to E11, press the F4 so we get the dollar signs, and then double click it just so it drops down all the way. And then there we are. It just amends it there for you. But just because that obviously is fixed to the cell that we had, okay, it's just showing you that absolute reference again there with the dollar sign. So just want to be cautious of there when you're copying your data over. If you don't have it in the exact same kind of position as what you had before, sir, then it's going to change all your formulas and it's just going to mess things up for you. So if we move it over, so we'll move it up into cell A1 and we can see that it keeps its original formatting, and obviously the E10 is still relevant because it kind of worked out that total there for us. So have a little play, see how you get on with that one, and we'll move on to the next lesson. So now we're going to have a look at how we can add and remove both rows and columns within our kind of information that we have here. So what we can do is we can start out, and where we have, say, the 7 here, we can click onto the 7 and we can see that it's highlighted that entire row. We can right click into it and then we have this insert option here. So that'll drop it down, and what we could do with this is say we just put in test, for example, and we put in 20 all the way along, just like so. Okay, then that's how we can do it. And what you might have seen as I were moving along there is it automatically started to update some of the formulas as we moved along. So if we double click into the sum, okay, we can see that we now have B4 to B10. And why this has happened is because when we've inserted this row 7 as test, okay, we've inserted it within the middle of our data, and Excel's smart enough to understand that, right, cool, so you just added in some data to an existing table, let's just modify kind of your formulas and stuff like that so that it all works together. So if you insert it in the middle, it's nice and easy, and obviously understanding what we've done before in terms of relative and absolute formulas, it's just easy enough to copy that down. So we know that that's there, and it's all worked out kind of nice and easy. So it works exactly the same if we wanted to add in a column. So we can click here, we can right click, and we can insert. So what we're going to do then is, because when we insert things in columns and stuff, they always insert to the left. So we can click into the E here, and we're going to go up to the Home tab. And we also have this cells section up here, and we have the insert. When we click into that, we can see that we have the insert cells, we have the insert columns, and we have an insert sheet. So we know we want to insert a column, and it's going to insert to the left here. So clicking on that, we can see this inserted, and it moved all of our data over. So what we could potentially do is just drag that over like so. And dragging that over, again, it works in a relative way, because if you remember when we were working on our data before, we were saying that dates are numbers. Okay, so we have March, and then we have April. So you can see that we have the 1st of April 2024, we have the 1st of March, okay, 2024, and so on and so on. So we have it nice and easy there, where we can just add in, and as we're working down, you can see there, and I won't go all the way down, but you can see as it's working there, we have that, and again, it's just amending all these different things, and it'd be just nice and easy just to kind of pull that across, and we could insert that data as we needed to do, because all of our formulas are updating, okay, and it's just moving along nice and easy. And as we double click into our formulas, we can see that it's added it on already for us. So we have the B6 to E6, so we have it all the way along there, and obviously because we dragged it along as a relative formula as well, okay, we have that. So how can we get rid of these? So what we could do then is, as we did before, we can click into it, and we can click on the right click, and we can either go delete, we can click into the column and go up here and we can say delete column. Okay, and again, exactly the same as it's undoing. Okay, it'll undo all the information for you. So once we've come back, then we can see that we have that's moved back there for us, and we have a total which there we go, sum has moved across. So we also have the test. So what we can do here is we'll just do the right click version. So we'll right click and we'll delete that there. And that's back to our original data. So we're going to be looking at how we can change the height and width of columns within Excel. And you might come across an example within Excel of something like this, where you see all these hashtags moving along, or you might have kind of text that is all squished up. And the question is then, how do you see this data, or what's going on here with this? And what's happening is basically it's telling you, or Excel is showing you that the column width is not wide enough to show all of that data within that specific area. So if we want to adjust the column, what we can do is we can go in between the D and F here where we see that line, and you can see that that symbol appears where we have a straight line and an arrow either side. If we just click onto that, we can see that the width appears, and we can drag it to where we need to do. And once you get to a point, okay, you can keep dragging, and that's where the information will come back available for you. And you can do this to make kind of anything show, and we can move stuff about. Obviously, we can move the total, and if we move that one down, and we just move it a little bit, you can see there that we went a little bit too short, so we just made it a little bit bigger, and you can condense everything down nice and easy. For me though, I like a little bit of white space, and it just makes things a little bit clearer for where it is, rather than kind of all compacted up. But this works exactly the same for the rows as well. So if we go in between 5 and 6, we can make the row work a little bit smaller, or we can kind of click into it and we can drag it down, and you can make the row bigger. If you have quite a lot of things within your row, then this is a way of doing it. And we can then do other things like wrap the text and stuff so that it'll all fit within that specific cell. You might be asking this question then, how can we adjust multiple ones at the same time? Obviously, we wouldn't just be moving one if we wanted to do multiple ones at the same time. We can click on the B, C, D, say for example, and then using the exact same way, if we move it to say 15, yeah, so we can see there we have 15, so 110 pixels, 15. And what that does then is, because we had B, C, D selected, it makes all of them move exactly the same, and it makes all of them exactly the same width. So if we were to click in between C now, and we can see that that's 15, and we can click in between B, and we can see that that's the same also. And that works exactly the same for rows. So again, we can click rows 5, 6, 7, like so, just selecting them, and we can drop them down, and it's going to work like that for you as well, okay, making them a little bit wider. But as always with Excel, there's normally a faster way of doing things. So what we can do is we can select all of the columns there. And if you double click rather than clicking, so double click, what it does is it auto adjusts, and it will auto adjust to the longest part of that cell or column. Okay, so what we have there is we can see that January 2024 is the longest part of that. So that's where it's adjusted. But if you look in particular in column E, where the total is there, you can see that total is the longest, okay, with the 5 letters there. And it's condensed that down to that point there. So it makes it nice and easy. But again, we'll just spread that back out a little bit, just so it's kind of not all crushed up and condensed. Also, as we're working on shortcuts and things like that, you can press Ctrl and A. And if you press Ctrl and A twice, you can see that you select this whole range here. And one of the shortcuts that you might see on TikTok and kind of Instagram and stuff like that more is where people use the shortcut keys. So once you've selected it all, they press Alt, which brings it up, and then they'll press H, and then O, and then we can see that we're brought up onto the format here. And down on the side, depending on which one you can do, you have the row height. So you have A if you press the row height, and that'll auto do the row height, or if you press I at this point, it'll do the width. So we'll just use the I for now, and we can see that that's just adjusted it. And then if you were to just flick through it again, so go Alt H O A, and that would do all the column width. So everything would just be moved back into place really easily for you there. So just kind of 2 quick shortcuts there. So Alt H or I would do the column widths. Just highlight everything. So Alt H or I, and we can see that does the column widths, and Alt H or A would do the row height. So if you have any questions about any of the shortcuts or like that, then don't forget to ask. But that's it. If you want to do it manually as well, then it's just a click and drag, moving it around. And obviously if you get the hashtags, then make sure that you can either double click to push it out a little bit or adjust it manually so that you can see all the data that's available to you. So what we're going to look at now is how we can hide and unhide information within our sheets. And the reason why you might want to do this is if you have a particular set of information, or you've got a formula in a cell or anything like that, and you don't want anybody to see it. So later on we're going to show you how we can protect that, and we can actually kind of put passwords and stuff on it. But for now, what we're going to do is just how we can simply make it so you can't see it. So we're going to take column B, for example. So we're going to pretend that our kind of data work from C onwards, and what we can do is right click on the B up here, and what we have is all the different options, and we can see the hide option here. So if you click hide, what we can do is that will then make that disappear, and it squishes them 2 columns together. So we can see that we've gone from A, C, D, E, F. Okay, but we can't see any of the data that's hidden in between there. All we can see is that slight little kind of gap there where the column was. Okay, we'll put up on the grey kind of border there. But other than that, we can't see anything else for it. And what that does is if you want to work on things or kind of not show people something, then that's a great way of doing it. So what you can do is we can select A and C at that point, and we can then right click again, go to unhide, and then that'll just bring that back for us. So that's it. If there's a particular piece of information that you don't want somebody to see for whatever reason, then that's a great way of hiding it. But say we want to hide B again, so we hide B for this instance, and then we can go up to view, and within view here what we have is we have these grid lines and formula bars and headers. So what we can do at this point is we can say if we hide the headings, then it makes it like it's a little bit more hidden away from us. Okay, so we lose all the numbers at the side and we lose all the letters at the top. Okay, getting rid of all them, and at that point it doesn't stand out as much in terms of being able to kind of do stuff. Again, we'll just unhide that and we'll show you that, but that's just a kind of simple way of hiding and unhiding things, and it just makes it so that things are not visible. So what we can look at now is how we can rename the sheets. And when we've been working on these, we had this original one that we had, and we had this one that we copied over to. So an easy way to do this is you can right click onto the tab, and then we can go to the rename, and we can just name this one copy, as that's what it is. And once we click off of that, then it will always keep that name as copy. So we can go back to sheet 1 and we can see that that's their copy. So when you've moved data, or if you have to have data on a separate sheet for whatever reason, then that's it. It's just an easy one just to work through in terms of being able to change the sheet names. But rather than right clicking and click rename, again, I like to kind of do things as easy as we can, so we can just double click into that. And I normally call my first sheet main or something like that. So we'll just keep it as main for now and press enter, and that will keep it where it is there. And like I say, it's just a tab, and rather than having like sheet 1, sheet 2, you know, and especially if you're in work or something like that, and someone says to you, oh, something's on sheet 8 or whatever, then, you know, some of them could be jiggled around. It's just sometimes easier to have the sheets as an actual name rather than anything else. And within these as well, we can also right click and we can change some of the sheet colors. So you'll be able to change that one to a green, say, and then say if we change the copy to the red, and then we can see that they're all kind of color coded a little bit as well for as we're moving along. So if you had, say, personal information or whatever on a couple of them, then you could put them as, say, a purple or a red or something like that. And then any kind of customer email information or anything else you could put as a different color. And again, when you're clicking on stuff, rather than reading it, sometimes your eyes are drawn to the color a little bit easier, and that'll help you out there. So one thing I like to do, like I say, I always have kind of a copy or a setting sheet, and I always put that in red as a kind of don't touch unless you're me sort of thing. So understanding how we can make new sheets, then what we're going to do is we can now look at how we can delete sheets. And with this one, it's something that you need to be really, really careful with. As we can see that we have the main and the copy here, but when you delete a sheet, there isn't any kind of way of bringing this back. So whereas when you input data into sheets here, we have the kind of 1, 2, 3, 4 there, we can delete that out, but then, you know, we always have that Control Z to bring it back for us. But when you delete a sheet this way, there is no way to ever bring it back. So if you're getting rid of the data, make sure that it is definitely something that you kind of want to get rid of, and it's not something anything is going to kind of crop up later on. But it's nice and easy to do. We don't even need to be clicked onto the sheet. We can just right click into the specific sheet that we want, and you're going to get all these links kind of come up here and different stuff we can do. And what we're going to look at is just the delete button here. And like I say, once it's clicked, then there's no way of bringing this back within Excel. So if we delete it, you can see that it brings it up, and you can see that word there permanently. Okay, so just make sure you understand that. Get rid of it. And once that is gone, then there is gone. Is the kind of thing. Once we add anything back in, we can see that it'll just bring up a new sheet there. And for instance, I'm just going to show you. So we've got sheet 1 there. If we delete sheet 1 out and then we add it, we can see that it adds sheet 2 because it won't ever create a sheet 1 again. Even though sheet 1 has already existed and there isn't a sheet 1 that exists within this workbook anymore, okay, it will always bring back a sheet 2 to start with. So just bear that in mind when you're deleting sheets, and just be careful with what you're doing with it, and all should be good. So we're going to start looking at formatting within Excel. So we can see that everything here is all looking the same in terms of all of the font is the same size and kind of all not bold or anything like that. And what we can do is to make things stand out within this is within the Home tab and on the ribbon here, you have this section here, which is called Font. And this is where you can change all the kind of text and everything else, making it stand out for however you want. So you can see at the side here, we have all the different fonts that you're able to choose from, and they're kind of nice and easy to choose from. You know, it depends on how you want things to stand out. You can put things as Arial black, we can make it a little bit more fancier, whatever you want it to do. Say we want to change it to that one. So then next to that, we have what's called font size. And again, we can just hover down these, and as we hover down, you can see that all of them change and make cells a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, and do what they need to do. But where we can do this as well is, if you're not sure, you can just use these little arrows at the side here, and we can click up and click down. But one thing with this is obviously you need to make sure that you clicked in the cell for where the data is that you're going to be working on, and we can just click it around, making it nice and easy. And just by doing these things, it's going to make some of your data stand out a little bit more, which is great, as that's what we kind of want. We don't want everything to look the same, otherwise it does become quite complicated to kind of differentiate what's what. So we have the dates here, and we have the total and the percentage, and we'll give it a go. We'll try. So we have up here, we have bold, italic, and underline. So we'll just try bold, and we can see by making this bold, then this stands out a little bit more, making this kind of, you know, more obvious for what it actually is. We'll try the bills as well, yeah, and then maybe the total. And you can see just by doing these little things, just them parts stick out a little bit more. So again, if we highlighted it, we could make a little bit bigger, and we can see that we get the hashtag error there that we had. So we could just essentially double click, make that a little bit wider, and then again just bump that up a little bit, and we know that's 12, and we should be good. But just by doing that there, you can see that these start to stand out really well, and we can start to see more of the information for what it is and where it is on our data. So now that we've started to understand how we can make our fonts look bigger and we can make them bolder, stand out a little bit more, one thing that makes it or catches your eye a little bit more than that is colour. And what we can do is we can select all of our cells along here, and where we were before up in the font section, we can see that we have both this little paint bucket here, and we also have this A that's got the red underline here. So the paint bucket is what will colour the back of the cells, and it will make the background whatever colour you have selected there, and A will make the font change colour. So we can just click on the little button here at the side, and when we do that, we can see that we have all these different colours, and as we scroll over them, we can see that it's changing colour. You also have the ability to go into more colours here, and you get this kind of custom palette that we can use, or you can go into custom and you can kind of click and drag that around wherever you need to do. You can also put in any hex codes that you have, so you might have heard of these before where you can kind of put the color directly in, and that's where you would put them in as well. So for us, we're just going to go for a nice and easy light kind of color, so we'll go maybe for that blue color there. And because that's now changed color, we can see that the black isn't probably the best option for this because it doesn't really blend in too well. So we can select all the blue there and go for the drop down. And if we change the right into white now, we can see that that stands out a lot more because we have that blue and white working well together. And it works exactly the same before, where we can select multiple rows and columns that are always joining, so we can move that across there. And then we can say, oh, so if we go for totals on this one, sir, so we just go for the total there. And again, we can just select this drop down here, and we might want to make that a grey like that, so we can see that our totals are there. And then if we go for, say, a lighter grey for what they are, and we can see that that's starting to break down really nicely now, where we have the darker part for the totals and we have the lighter part for all the bills and stuff. And just by making them little changes there, you can start to see that things stand out really well, and it makes your data start to look a little bit better. So once you've started to make all your data look more colourful and you can kind of see it start to stand out a little bit more, what you can do to make this even more is we can start to add borders into this. So we have the bills and all the dates and stuff over the top here, and we can select the data. And up in this font section where we were before, we can see that we have this little bit in between kind of the bold and underlined part and the colours. And this part here is where the borders are. And if we click this little arrow to the side, it has quite a big drop down. And what we can do here is we can see all the different borders that we have. And we can select kind of top, bottom, and wherever. So for us, we have the row 3 selected. So if we click there, we have a thick bottom border selected. Okay, what that's going to do there is it's going to have that nice thick line there in between, and we can see that it just adds that kind of degree of separation that we might want. So we can do this again, and we can move across and we can click, and because we've already selected the thick bottom border, you can see that this selection here has changed. So we can just click onto that now rather than having to go through the whole drop down again. And again, we can see that that's just added that nice little border there, and it just makes it stand out a little bit, gives that division and makes your data look a little bit better. So if we have this here, so we have the total and we select there, what we can do is we can go in, and as we did before, we can select left and right now. So we can see that we have a left border or we have a right border. So because we selected E, if we were to put a right border, it would come down between E and F, which isn't what we wanted. So we need to go left border at this point. And by adding that left border, it just adds in that kind of separation there, making sure that we have the totals and the percentages separate from the actual data itself. And just for good measure, we'll add in this one, and we can't just click on this again, because if we were to click on this again, it'd just add it into the left, and we wouldn't even see it because it's just down the side here. So we need to be able to click onto it, have that drop down menu, and we'll go right border. So you can see by just adding in these and just that little bit of color that we did there, just for a couple of kind of cells and stuff like that, it makes it stand out so much more. You know, you can see you've got your titles up here, you've got all your kind of summaries of data across this part, we have what our bills are here, and we have the actual data here. And just adding that color, adding these few little borders, we can see very quickly how you can make all this stand out and make it look a lot better. So now we're going to look at how we can make this into what we want in terms of currency and show the end user kind of what they want to be looking at. And it just makes it a little bit quick and easier. If you know, rather than 800, you might be looking at $800 or £800 in kind of whatever currency you're working with. So it's really quick and easy. And what we can do is we can select the information that we want here. And as their percentages, we'll just leave them for now. So we can see that all the information here from B4 down to E10 is all going to be working on currency. So what we need is up here, we see the home tab. And from the home tab, we can go to this little section where we have numbers. And you can see we have this currency looking little icon here. So we can click into the drop down, and here you'll find whether you want to use dollars, euros, pounds, And as usual, there's kind of more options that we can click into there if we want to do. But for me, we're just going to use English pounds. And we can see that we get the error here where we have the kind of the hashtag, sorry, just because of the width of the columns. What we can do is we can just select E and double click into it, and we can see now that that's made that go a little bit wider. And again, clicking into D, and we can make that a little bit wider. So clicking to the side now, then we can see all of our data now has been changed into these pound symbols at the side here, so people will know that they're working with kind of currency rather than an actual number, or say a fractional decimal, a fractional percentage, what we're working with at the side here. And what some people like to do, I generally keep it like this just so that people know, but some people like to select the cells like so. And up at the side here, we can see that we have the comma style. All it does is take away the pound symbol for them selected cells. So we can see here, it just opens up that little bit more white space there to the side, and then people can kind of see what they want to do. So we'll just extend that out a little bit more. So it leaves this here, and you can see it just opens it up. So for me, I just leave these pound symbols in just so that people know, especially because there's a mix of data in terms of fractional percentages over here and pounds here. Obviously, in terms of writing, people will obviously understand what that is from what we've done with the changes that we've done. But you know, for a lot of things, like especially you might be thinking, oh well, these might be currencies or anything, but you know, again, it's just kind of working with what we have and understanding what to change and where to change it. So as we just looked at currency there, we can now see that we need to change this part over here for the percentages, as when we look at these, we're still working in fractional percentages where we want to work in just percentages, again making it easier so that when someone's looking at this quickly, they have the ability to just kind of see what's going on without having to sift through too much data. So we can select the cell there, and we can just go down selecting it also. We've got F4 down to F10. We're going to go on to the home tab here, and then moving across we can see that within the numbers section again we have this percentage here. If we click on the percentage, we can see that that'll drop it down into percentage. But you can see there that some of the percentages change. So we have the 71% there, but when we were working down here, say for instance some of these, so what do we have? 5, 2, 4, 13. So you can see that the 5 there moved up to 6, okay, and the 13 moved up to 14 there. So just going back, and we can see that, and that's just because of where the decimal place ends up moving to. So if we go into percentage there, again we can see the 6 and the 14s change there, but next to the percentage here we have these two little buttons here, which is just going to move the decimal place up or down. So if we increase it down, then we can see that the 6 moves back to the 5.51 and the 13 moves to the 0.69 there, and it just neatens everything up a little bit, makes it a little bit kind of more accurate than what it actually is when it were on the previous one. As when you have it down as it were, let's see, you can bump it up, but it's entirely up to you on how you want to look at it, and obviously if you want to just bump it up or bump it down, just bearing in mind that it normally rounds up for these, so it's up to you on how you want to work with them. So now we're going to start to look at how we can jazz some of this up down at the bottom, and obviously we were looking at how we did it up here and thinking about that, but you might not want to do everything again and kind of repeat the processes in terms of colours and things like that. You might be struggling on how you did stuff, especially if you come back to something after a while and you've not worked on it, then you might be thinking, oh, well, what were this? Well, Excel's got you covered yet again in terms of being able to copy just the formatting of something and move it into something else. So we will use the bills up here, and we can see up at the top here that we have this. And if we take this for an example of what we want as a title, for say the min, max, average and count, what we can do is just select the cell where we want to copy the formatting from. And up here on the home tab, we have what's called Format Painter, and it does what it says on the tin again. You kind of click that, we can see that we get the dotted line around this, and what that's done is that's just taken just the format, and we can move this down to wherever we want now. So clicking into the min, and you can see by clicking onto the min now, it's changed all the colors of that, and it's made the kind of text go white, made it a little bit bigger, and moved it over. We've also managed to get the underline in there as well. So it's just copied everything over for us. And this works exactly the same in terms of if you want to select multiple cells at the same time. So we can click on the format printer. Again, we get the dotted line that's going to go around, and we can select a section of something there. And again, we can see that that's just moved it all over, made it all blue, the text white, okay, and underlining the cells that we had there to copy the exact format that we had over into this section here. So looking at the format painter, then we can see that we've changed all these different cells and we've made the colors different and they're all matching now. And what we can do is start to look at alignment a little bit more. And with alignment, this is where it can get a little bit complicated and sometimes things can fall down a little bit. And the reason for this is that people will be referencing cells, but obviously if that cell is over kind of a couple of cells, then this can create issues for some people. But what we're going to look at is how we can move and kind of arrange things so they look a little bit differently within Excel. And we're going to do this with a monthly budget that we have up here. And we can see that if we click into cell A1, that we have the monthly budget here because that's what we have in the formula bar up at the top. But if we're to click into B1, then we don't have anything within that cell. But what we can do is we can select across this row and we can see that we have all the cells from A1 across to F1 selected. We're going to use the Home tab, and now we're going to see in the alignment part we have this merge and center here. And what that's going to do is you can see that it's taken out all the cell lines there in between, and it's got that cell and it's moved it across that whole part there. And within this then, like I say, when you click into it, you can see now that it's just highlighted that whole area there, okay, making it so that when we go to work on that, okay, we just click into that and it selects everything rather than just specific cells like you can see underneath here. So another way of doing this as well, and like I say, sometimes this makes it a little bit easier for formatting if you have different things, is you can once again select the whole area that you have and you can right click. Right click is going to bring you up this drop down menu and we can go down and select format cells. So again, we want to come into this alignment part. So as we had up here, we want to look at alignment, and what we can see is we have this center across selection. So because we've selected from A1 across to F1, what we can do now is we can press the OK button and that'll do exactly the same. But now we can see that we have the ability to click within the different cells, whereas before it just selected the whole kind of cells or the whole row up to F. Now we can kind of click in and we can type into these specific cells as we did before. So once we've got this, then say you want to unmerge this at any point, then we can select the cells that we have and we can just either double click it or we can unmerge the cells. And we can see there that because the alignment isn't quite right, we can just change the alignment up here with the text. So do we want it to be left aligned, do we want it to be center aligned, or do we want it to be right aligned? And as the text was left aligned before, okay, we can just select that. But for now, we'll just go back to what we were. We'll just work on a merge and center there. So what we're going to look at is how we can start to make this data stand out, and we can see the kind of pain points that we would have within a budget or in the data that you have. And this can work on the percentages, it can work in the numbers here that we have, or it could work down here, say if you were over a certain number, and this is going to be used through conditional formatting. And what this does is it basically looks at the parameters that you set for it. So it says, is this? And if it is, then it'll do something, or if it isn't, it can do something else. What we can do with this then is we can look at, say, these numbers that we have within this section here, and we can kind of automate our budget a little bit more in terms of making it color coded and standing out for anything that we need to do. So if something was, say, for instance, all right, well, why has our food gone up £10 per week there? Then we can make that cell stand out a little bit more. And this is dynamic in the way that it works. So as we update stuff and as we move through things, then it will naturally kind of update these as well for us and it'll make them stand out. So to do this then, what we need to do is we need to select the cells that we want to work on and we want to conditional format. So for us, we're going to work on the B4 down to the D9. And once you've got down to this point, we're going to use the Home tab and we're going to go conditional formatting here, which is in this style section here. And you can see you get all these different things where we can use kind of scales and kind of up and downs and highlights and stuff like that. And we can even program our own customized rules. Excel's give us these great starting points that we have here and how we can look at stuff. So we know that the one we're going to say is this above $150? So what we can do is we can look at the cells and we can say, is this greater than? And we know that that's the cell that we want to be working on. And when it works on this, then we can see that we have the number here and it's given us a number. So if we type in 150, then you can see as we're typing in the numbers there, it's automatically in the background working on the conditional format and it's showing you what it's going to be highlighting for that specific set of rules. And we can also see how it's going to color it in and what it's going to do to the format themselves. So we know that we're going to get a light red fill with dark red text. And if we click into that, you can see a different selection of stuff. And you also have this ability here to customize stuff and change the fills, etc. to different colors. So we'll just close that out, and we're going to stick with this 150 that we have here. Okay, and we'll stick with the light red just as a kind of base for now. But as I say, it's nice and easy if you wanted to change this. And we can click OK. And once we've clicked OK, we can see that we've already got these highlights. So we know that our rent is above the 150 point, and we know that that particular month for February was above 150 as well. And you might be kind of thinking, oh, well, why is it not highlighted these if it's 150? It's because it's above 150. So if we were to change this to 151, then we can see that it would update it. But because it's at the kind of maximum that it is, then it would stick with that. And as we move any of these, so say we magically paid £200 for some water, then again, you know, that would update, and we can kind of see how this colors in. And like I was saying, this can be used on kind of percentages, this can be used on min and maxes, and like I say, for now we've just used it in this section here. But have a little play with it, see what you want, and you can change it. You're using the greater than, less than, between, equal to, see how your kind of budget turns out, and if there's any little surprises that you might see within there for you. So now we're going to look at how we can insert pictures within our spreadsheet here. So up at the top here within the tab, you can see that we have the insert option, and clicking on that we can see that we have this section here called illustrations. So we're going to jump through all of these looking at them individually, but to start out with, we're going to be looking at this picture one here. And when we click into that, we can see we have two options. We have the place in cell and place over cell, but within both of them we have the same options of this device, the stock images, and the online pictures. And what we can do with this is, obviously it's pretty self-explanatory for this. So this is this device, so anything on my computer I can pull it from there if I've already downloaded it, and I can insert it. The stock images we would automatically open up, and these are what it gives you from Excel itself. So if we were to type in something, let's say budget, we can see we get some pictures here. So we can have different things. We've got icons and stuff like that. But what we can look at, so if we type icons maybe and put in, say something like money, okay, we can see that we've got something similar here. And we'll use this little piggy bank one here. We'll click insert, and we can see now that we've inserted that. So because we went with the option in cell, we can see that this placed it within the cell that we have there. And what we can do is, if we wanted to make this bigger, we'd have to make the row bigger, like so, to increase the size of this image. And it's kind of one of them where we can drag it along, we can adjust the columns and things like that. But for now, like I say, we've inserted it in. If you wanted to make it so that you're over, and we can use the same picture again, we'll place over cells, we'll go for the stock image, and we'll have a quick look at icons, and I'll pop in the money one for the bigger one. And you can see now that this has placed it over the cells, and by placing it over the cells, you also get this little default box that we have here. And we can adjust this box as we need to do, making the picture bigger or making it smaller. So depending on where and how you want to insert it, then you can do that, and you can make the picture look exactly how you want, okay, just in all the different dimensions. But that's just kind of placing it over. Within the insert option, then when we're looking at pictures, we also have, so if we go over, so we also have the option of online pictures. And when you click online pictures, it's going to take you through Bing, and it's going to give you all these different categories and things that we can look at and work on. And this is just as it says, it's getting the pictures off of the internet. So again, we'll type in money, we'll see what it kind of comes back with. And we can see that we have Creative Commons there ticked. This basically means like anything with the ability to kind of use or kind of do what you want with. And obviously people are going to be coming after you for copyright and things like that. So we can see that there has put it out, and it's a really big picture. So we could just make this smaller, just dragging this down. There we go. And then we can drag it over. And there we can see that we have the Creative Commons part there, saying about this photo and what it is. So again, we can, there we go, make that a little bit bigger there. Okay, and we can see what that is. But that's just the difference between it. And like I say, you can see that obviously when you've got online photos, you've got offline photos, and So you can now see what the difference is. So we have the incel, we have the overcell, and we have the online pictures. So there's a different options for you in terms of if you want to insert pictures within your workbooks, then that's how we can go about doing it. So we've previously looked at inserting pictures within Excel, and we can insert them into the either cell that we have, or we can insert them over the cells. And something very similar to images is going to be shapes, and you might see a lot of shapes in terms of dashboards and things like that. And the way that we can do this is coming up here into the insert, and then we can go into the shapes within the illustration, and we can see that we have all these recently used ones. So previously, some of the shapes that you might see are things like these little rectangles and things where we can just draw them. And once you just click and drag, then we can see that we get all this kind of going on, and we can release it there. And once we've released it, we can see that we have a border within that, and we also have the color within. And what people will use this for is going over things. So say you want to highlight all your totals, for instance, then you can go over them like so. And we can't see anything just yet because it's too dark. But one thing that we're going to look at next is how we can format and edit all these. And we can see that we have other options though within this. So before we start editing things, we're just going to show you some of these other shapes that we can do and reasons why people might use them, because you can see that there is actually quite a lot of different things. Different pointers and stuff, and we can see that we have arrows down here. So we can see that we have the left arrow. So say that we want to highlight something, or say we want to call something out, for instance, we want to use the arrow there, and then we can click and drag that, and we can just show that. So if you have some sort of data or some particular point within your data that you want to show people, and you want to make sure that they kind of automatically check on that particular point, then you could say, oh, well, look at where the arrow is. And obviously when you open this up, the two things that you kind of see straight away are obviously the big rectangular blue kind of thing there, and also the arrow that you have down here. They're the two things that kind of draw your eyes in, and like I said, they're really helpful as shapes, and there's some that you probably see quite a lot in terms of these on dashboards. So now we've got a couple of shapes within here. What we're going to do is have a look at how we can actually start to format these. So we'll start out with this big rectangle that we have here. And we can see that this is taking over and blocking out quite a lot of information that we have here. So if we click into that, we can see up here that we have this little tab that should appear. So if we're out of it, we can see it disappears. But when we click onto the shape, we can see that we have the shape format that will appear here. And once we click into the shape format, then we can see that we get a couple of options here within the shape styles. And what we can do now is start to look at how we can change this. So when we're within this, we can look at the outline, and we can say, well, what color do we want this? So we can potentially change this up a little bit. So say we want it to go to 2 1/4, and then we want the shape fill. And because we can't see anything underneath, what we can do is we can change that to no fill like so. And the color of the outline there that we have don't really make that stand out anything. So we can go there and we can just change the color of the outline, making it go to red. So we can do as we did before, where we can just then quickly adjust this and make it go onto the numbers that we have. So just neaten that up a little bit. And we can see now that that really starts to make that column stand out as we have all that red kind of outline on there and going around. Again, we can use this on the arrow. So we can look at the arrow. So say we want it to point up to the shape here. We can go and we can know the shape format is going to appear for us here. And this time we're going to change the fill to red. We can change the outline, say to a darker red. And we can see that there, just by simply changing the colours, has changed that quite a lot. So it's definitely pointing you towards that percentage there of 71.43. And we can see that our totals are all highlighted there. But you can go a little bit further with these shapes. And when you click into the shapes, one thing to look out for is these little yellow dots that you have. And if you have shapes like this, it means that you can edit the shape itself. So we see, whereas before, if we were clicking onto the little white ones, we can adjust the size of it. But if we click into the yellow ones that we have here, we can click and drag it, and you can see that that changes the point ahead. And also if we click into that one there, then we can see that that makes the back of the arrow go a little bit thicker or a little bit thinner, so however we want. And if we click into the little rectangle box that we have here, we can see that we have another little yellow one here. And just by adjusting that, what that does there is we can see that it makes the corners a little bit rounded and works from there. And this isn't for every shape, so just kind of have a look at the shapes, have a bit of a play, see which ones work for you. But ones like the smiley face that we have here, we can see that we have the little yellow dot, so we can make it go sad, or we can make him so that he's There we go. So we can see that he's just got that kind of blank expression on his face. And like I say, it just gives you the ability to change some of the shapes however you want, if there's something that you want to edit, or, you know, just to, especially for like the rectangle boxes there, particularly make them stand out a little bit more and fit within the rows and columns that you have, or particularly highlighted. So have a little bit of play, see how you get on with them ones, and then we'll come back to that. It's awesome. So we've had a look at how we can insert shapes and how we can insert some of the icons and things like that, and then how we can format some of these. But say you want to build really complex things using the shapes, what we can do is we'll just try this on a different sheet, is we can go into insert again, and we have this thing called smart art here. And once you've inserted smart art, you can see that you get all these different options up here of processes and things like that. So we can use this one for example here. So we can see that we have this circle accent timeline, and we can insert that one. And if we want to just move that over there, we can see that we're given these text boxes here. So what we want to do is we want to have the text pane at the side here. And we can see now that we have these ones that are kind of at the side, on the left-hand side aligned, and we have the ones that are indented. So the ones that are indented would mean a minor step, and the ones that are left aligned would mean the major step. So say we want to put a budget together. Like so, then we can work on that, and then we want to say we want to implement the budget. So we can see that we have two major steps there, and what we can then work on is inserting some of these little steps. So we want to plan the budget, we want to understand, we want to implement where the money is. So we can see that then that's assigned that to them two minor steps that we have there. And when we're implementing the budget, we can say we want to do cash stuffing, and we want to weekly shop. So again, we can see now that we've added all this. So you want to put a budget together and you want to implement the budget, but within these two steps, you have these two little minor steps. So what we can do is say we want to add extra ones, then we can press the enter afterwards, and we can see that that adds another step for us. But say we want to add a major step rather than just having another one of these little steps, then we can see up at the top here that it's given us these two little options. So we can go to the smart art design that we have here, and we have the promote and the demote up on the create graphic part. So we can promote that there, and we can see that that there bumps it up to a little circle that has kind of that hole in the middle there, so looking like a donut. And then we can say revise budget. Yep. And then that works like so. So we have all that there. So we have our major steps, we have our min steps as we're working along, and we can see that we have a process that we need to be following. And you have these options here where we can change the colors of it, and we can use the smart art styles here. So we can go down and we can have a look. You can make it look a little 3D, changing any of these to whatever you would like, making it however you want. And if you want to go a little bit further, let's say we have the option of changing these kind of just standard out the box kind of ones. So you wouldn't have to be inserting all the different pictures and stuff, and especially like with the text and stuff, moving it about. So when we go into it, then say we want to select these ones. So we just want to use the major ones. Then we can go in and we can change the shape, color of these. We can change the outlines, and you can do anything that you want manually rather than just working on the ones that come out of the box. So, you know, say if you're kind of clicking in it and you're not happy with any of these default ones that it would kind of automatically give you, or that you want to change anything that it doesn't particularly have in terms of colors or anything like that, then you always have the options there to just go up to the format, click into it, and then we can add it there. And it works for a lot of these different ones. So when you're working in smart art, like I say, there's a lot of different selections you can click on, and it'll give you the options to add them and work through things. So if you're working on, say, hierarchy charts for work or anything like that, it works in exactly the same way in terms of the indents and things like that, and promoting and demoting and working on that, so that it'll make it a lot easier, and you can keep all of that within your Excel document. So up to this point, then, we've been working on text and numerical values with all our data, and we can see here that we have it all kind of laid out, and we start to input some pictures, and we start to input some of these symbols as well with the arrows. I'm kind of looking at these percentages down here. But if we want to make this look more kind of presentable, and we want to start putting graphs and stuff like that, so it makes it more visual, then we can start to do that. And this is how we can do that really easily. So starting out, then, we need to kind of look at the data and understand what it is that we're wanting to get from. And we're going to start to have a look at what all these are and compare them against each other, kind of next to each other. And we already started doing that to some degree with the conditional format and stuff, obviously setting rows and things like that, and then the percentages at the side here. But sometimes you just need to be able to see that kind of visually. So we can start here, and we're just going to select this builds up at the top here. And we know that we need this because this is going to be our kind of row, and it's going to tell us what month it is. And then obviously we need to break down what it is within the columns it's going to show. And then obviously the data itself. So there's lots of different graphs within Excel, but for now we're just going to select this data here. And what we're going to do is we're going to go up to the insert option here. And from the insert option, you can see you have this section here called chart. And you have all these different charts that you can pick. It gives you recommended charts as well. But for us, we're just going to work on this kind of 2D column chart here. And you can see just by hovering over it straight away, it already gives you the look of these. But we're just going to work with this one here, which is a clustered column. And it works really well for kind of large data sets and stuff. And for us, it kind of works really well because it breaks down each of the different things that we have and it shows us there. So just having that there quickly and placing it over the data, it starts to show some really interesting stuff kind of straight off the bat. And you can see these big blue ones here that stand out. Obviously, we have the legend down here, which tells you what all the different colors are and what they're related to. And we can see that these ones here obviously relate to the rent that we have up at 800. But just having a look at these as well, you've got all these little kind of lines in between as well. So you can see that all of them match up perfectly. So the rent has been the same across all of the months, just looking at that. And then down here, you've got all these kind of lesser values as well. So we have the electric, we have the water, we have the gas, we have the food, and we have treats. And we can see just by looking at these, we can see treats has fluctuated a little bit. We can see some of the others as well moving about. But what we're going to do is we're just going to take this now and we can just drag this down and we can just place that underneath our data. Or even if you want to do, what you can do is place it to the side. So we can just get rid of this. And what you can do is up at the top, like we did with the pictures before, you can just resize that to wherever you want and fit that in there. So if we were to just pop that in there, then at least we can see that while we're working on it. And one of the things that we can do, or one of the things to be conscious of, is that this is dynamic as well. So when you change the data in your tables here, it's going to change all the data here as well within this. So say we change this to 600, okay, you can see there that not only have all of our formulas over this side updated, but you can see here that this is updated. And again, it's just a really quick visual way of looking at something and being like, oh, actually, why in January is this rent kind of less than this? You know what I mean? Because everything should be roughly the same when you're working on budgets and stuff. If you're working for, your home budgets, you think, oh, well, rent's going to be the same every month. Then you can kind of look at this and be like, oh, well, why was that different? And again, we can just place that back. And you can see that it just puts it back there, making it nice and easy. So that's just the basic kind of cluster one, and it works really well for a lot of data. So at this point then we have our chart and we've kind of started to visualize some of our data here. And what we can do within this then is when you click into this, it works very similar to the way that the shapes worked before. So we can click into the chart and you can see by clicking into it here, it gives you these two extra options here up in the ribbon. So we have chart design and we also have the format option. And when we click into it, we can see that we also get these three options here at the side. So just start out, then we can see that we have our title and we can click onto the title, and a lot of the things within the chart are customizable. So we can click into it here, and just as we did before, we're just going to change the name just to budget, okay? Just so we have something rather than chart title there. And we can see from here then, once we've done that, that stays up at the top. But what you can do is you can click into the plus bit here. And as I said, everything's customizable. So if we turn off the title, we can see that that'll disappear. Clicking that will bring it back on, and we can see that we can turn off the grid lines or the legend. So we have the bottom bit there, but obviously turning that off, you're not going to understand what's where. And we have the option here when we have the little arrows, you can change how things work. So we can change where we would like it. And just hovering over it there just gives you that quick little look of what it is. And for us, we're just going to place it at the top there. And just looking at that, then it just makes it more presentable, doesn't it? So when you're looking at these underneath, you're kind of reading from top to bottom. And it just makes it more so you can understand where things are. Within our options up here then, as we did before, we have these kind of quick options. So you can just hover over them and it's going to show you how it would naturally kind of change the data for you. So we can see there that it's added in all the values, okay? And you've got all these different options of different kind of colors, and different ways that it lays it out for you, but they're just kind of a couple of different things on how that can potentially work for you. And like I say, it's all customizable within this bit. So just pressing on the plus there, and we can see that we have the data labels there. So say you want to add that in, okay, it's just nice and easy to add in. And, you know, it makes it a little bit cluttered. So it's about having a play around with it, seeing what works for you, and then just kind of adding in what you need to do to make sure that that label works for you. And, you know, you can change the options again. So you can see that this is just calling it out. It's working on different things. Okay, so again, everything's customizable, and it's just entirely up to you on how you want to have that data and what would present it in the best way for you. So what we can look at now then is how we can manipulate and change the data that we have within our charts. And it's really easy. It's something that kind of people can get overcomplicated with it and think there's a lot of formulas and stuff, but it's been made really easy. So what we're going to do is we're just going to move this shape out of the way just a little bit, because I want to be able to show you this. As we click into the chart that we have there then, and we can see that, you know, when we're exactly the same as when we're working on formulas, Excel's great at highlighting what is actually working data-wise with. So we can see that we have this little box around where all of our kind of things are for rent and everything. We have the 3 months selected up here, and we have our actual data here. You can see within this section here, you have these little corners that we can click and grab onto. Okay, so what we can do here is we can click down onto this bottom here and just drag it over. And we can see that that's moved over one there. When we release it there, exactly as we did before, it just dynamically changes all of our charts. So we can see that now we've got rid of a month there. And if you want to add it back in, works exactly the same way. So we can just select our data, drag it over one, and we can see that that's added it back in there. Really easy for us, okay? So we can just manipulate the data there. And it works in the same way in terms of the rows as well. So that's just the columns. So for the rows as well, if you want to get rid of a row, as we can see here, like for the rent, it really skews the data. Obviously, it's really high. It kind of blows all these out of the water sort of thing. So we can click into this, and you can see that because I'm coming in from the blue there goes a little bit bigger, highlights itself, and we can just drop it down a row there. So we can see now that we've only got the electric, the water, the gas, the tree selected, and we can release it there. So now that you've done this, you can start to see the change. So we can see that the electric's changed a little bit. We can see that the water stayed the same. The gas has probably roughly stayed the same. The food and the treats, though, have changed. Okay, so you can just see these little gaps there, where before, when you had the rent obviously blowing out, it wasn't too clear with what it were doing and stuff. So just one to be conscious of. And obviously, if you can move the data around and just make things a little bit cleaner, then things like this is just going to help you. And it looks a lot better. What we're going to look at now is how we can actually edit this chart that we have here, and we can customize it in a lot of different ways. And the way that we need to be working on this, as we always do, is when we click into the chart, we can see that it highlights it, but we also get these two little options that we have up here. So we have chart design and we have the format up at the top here. So within chart design, we know that we already have these kind of pre-made kind of sets for us that we can see, and you know, we've got quite a few of them. And at the side here, you've also got change color. So you can change these really easily if you find anything that you particularly like, or if they match up with your kind of color schemes or anything like that. But say you want to kind of change this individually and you want to make the changes, you know, to whatever you want, and the changes are shown. So what we can do is we can click onto one of the columns that we have here. And by clicking into that, we can see that we get these little bubbles at the top here. So these little circle bits. And that's selected both of it, so you can see that we're working on the food range. Because again, Excel's really good at showing you what it's working on, so we know that we're working on that. And we can click into this format tab now. And by clicking into this format tab, we can see within shape styles, again, we get a couple of options that we can work through, and they're already predefined, but we can change the color as well using this shape fill option here. So say we want to make that a little bit of a lighter blue, then we can click into that like so. And again, clicking into electric, so we can see that it's selected both of us. We can go up to the fill and say we want to make that yellow, then we can click into the yellow. Once you click change, you can see that it also changes the legend for you up here. Okay, and it works really easy, just making it kind of individually for you, how you want to make it. And you can edit everything within this chart. So we know that we've got the grid lines here, so you can click into the grid line area that you have there. And again, you can use the fill. So if we were to select this, then we can see, you know, you get a couple of different options. And say we just went for that lighter gray there, it just breaks it up from the whole background of the chart itself. places that grey background, kind of not as grey as the grid lines and stuff, just makes them colours stand out a little bit more for you. But everything's kind of customizable, like I say. So if we want to work on this legend part here, then we want to change the format. So rather than being in format, because this is the text part that we want to change, we'll go to the home tab and we can see that we have the text here as we were working on before. So we can just make this bigger if we wanted to do. So say we want to make that up to a 10. And, you can change any of these to whatever the font you want to do. So we can go down. So you can just go down and you can click any of the fonts you want. If you use the Adobe one there, and if you wanted to make it bold, works exactly the same. And want to make the side here, change these to bold and change the months to bold there. And because we've kind of highlighted these and changed these a little bit, it's made the title so that that's not really kind of giving you any information, or it's not as prominent as it was before. So we can just click into that, making it as bigger or small as we want to do, change it over to the right font that we need to do, and making that bold as well. Just clicking off, you can see the changes that it's made really quickly there. Making this information bold, it just sticks out a lot more than what it did before. Okay, but that's how we can kind of easily work through just customizing the things and making it all look the same for where we are. So to now then, while we've been working on our charts, we can see that we have the chart here. And we've edited it to the point where it kind of is, everything's really squished in. I mean, nothing's really got the opportunity to push itself out a little bit more. And especially when we start to move it over. So say we add March back in there, you can see that it squishes it up even more. And, if you have a lot of data and you kind of want to put a lot of different things in, then it's not going to be great to have it here, or even if you kind of have it underneath you, then flick it backwards and forwards. So one way that we can do this is we can move the chart itself. So you can see that we have it selected here because we have these little bubbles in the corner here. And we're just going to go over into chart design. And when we click into chart design, okay, we can see over here that we have the chart location. So we can click onto the move chart and we can see that the object is currently in main. So we have the tab main there, but we can see that we want to add it there. So we want to put it into a new sheet, and we want to say monthly, when I can spell. Say we want to make it a monthly budget like so. Then what we can do is we can click OK. And what that does now is it's created its own tab for it. So we can see down here that we have a tab called monthly budget, and it's put it in its own tab. So now everything's spread out a little bit more, and it still works exactly the same. So say we change this to 600. So everything still works the same as what it did before in terms of how it is dynamically and stuff like that. So we can see here that we have the food value for January. Okay, it's 150, but if we change this, so we go down to the food value 150, say we drop this down to 100, we can see that again it's changed here, but it's also changed on our chart as well. Okay, so we can see that catch up there, it's changed it on our chart, and it still works and connects dynamically to all of our data, but it just gives it that extra bit of space to work, and obviously you can see things a little bit more. So if you want to make the title say a little bit bigger, at least we can do now, and you're not kind of worried about everything fitting into that one little screen there. So we've been looking at our data then, and we've made it into this bar chart here that we have, but if we want to change it, say we want to put this into, say, a pie chart, then what we're going to do is we're going to do as we did before, and we can select the data that we had before, go to the insert tab, and we can see that we have the pie chart selected here, and we can select the pie chart like so. And with pie charts, they work a little bit differently, as they are only kind of really good for working in rows or columns in terms of data. They don't really work too well with all the different data points that we have here. And as you can see there, when we've selected the bar chart, when we've selected the pie chart, we can see here that we have rent. Okay, so we've only got the rent part selected there because it only works on that one data point, and it's working on that for the January, February, March. It's not great at breaking all the individual costs down as we did before, but this is how we can change stuff and work on it. So let's say it works on either kind of a row or a column the best. So we can click into the chart itself, and as we did before, we can see that we had this. So if we just wanted to work into February, say, then we can just select our selection here, and we want to make sure that we work in February. But here we only have the rent again, so we can see that this is currently just taking the rent part there of this, and we obviously need this to work down the column and work through it all. But for now, it's just working on that one row for us, okay? So before, if you remember, it was taking the rent and it was going 800, 800, 800. Okay, but for now we need it to work this way rather than down. So as we have it selected there, we can see the switch rows and columns here. And by switching the rows and columns now, it's working down the column rather than across on the row. So you can see here that it's breaking it down, and we can see that we have the February. So the title's changed up here from rent to February, and then it's broken it down for us. So say now that we don't want to work into February, say we want to change it, and we want to look at the difference of, say, our treats across all the different months. So we can click into the corners here and we can select it. And by selecting it again, because we have the date up here, so we can see that we have January 24 selected up here, but we only have one treat, which is why we're getting this kind of error that we have here within our pie chart, because all it's selecting is the January part of that. Okay, so what we need to do is, again, change our selection there. And by changing our selection, it's gone from working on a singular column, okay, to working in rows. And we can see now that it's working on the January, February, March for all of the treats. And if you want to just change it, you can just click and drag it up and it'll be working in the rows. So that's just a quick way of understanding and how to change the pie charts. But like I say, it's just making sure that you're working with it, in the rows or the columns, and just using the titles and kind of the legends to work out which section you're currently working on. But, it's really easy to do, and we can just change the data around however we want and just make sure that you're kind of changing the row or column where you need to do, just to get that single data point. So whether you want to look at the singular column or the singular row, okay, then pie charts are great for that. And obviously they break it down for the percentages and things like that as well. So when we come back to this now, we can see that we have all of our data. So we have it all to the left here, and then we have our charts over to the right here. And if we want to present this data or print it out at any point, then what we can do is we can go up to File, and then we can go down to the Print option that we have here. And when we click into this, we can see that we have some options already available. And what we can do is, clicking on the print preview that we had there, we can already see that we've got issues here, because when we're printing in the portrait mode. We can see that our data is longer horizontally than what it is vertically. We can see that we already have an issue with our data being in portrait mode. So one thing we're going to have to do with this then is potentially flip this over and make the orientation into horizontal. You can see that we have big gaps here at the side as well. So we might want to do something with this and make sure that we kind of move and make the most out of our page. So we might want to reduce the margins a little bit more. We might want to change the kind of headers and footers, anything that we want to do like that. But if you just want to get a quick idea of how your page looks, then this is a way that you can do it, and just kind of quickly flipping it there, we can still see that this is causing a bit of an issue in terms of where it is, even when we've moved it horizontally. So it might be worth just jigging stuff about and just using that print preview there, just to have a look at how things are kind of coming out and what you would like to look like if you were planning on printing them out. So we can see here it's not great. And in the next one, we're going to be looking at how we can start to fix some of these issues. So previously then we were just looking at how we can go to the print preview, which we use going to the File and then down onto the print options. Click into the print preview and we can see that we have that there. And I've just moved my chart down from the side here just to the kind of bottom, just to show you how this works a little bit more. So we had the orientation part here, and we can see that currently our orientation is horizontal. Okay, so we might want to change that. And if we change that over, we can see that that fits a little bit better in terms of where our data is and what our data is looking for. Obviously, we've been stacked upon each other. Okay, it works a little bit better, like so. And we have different ways that we can change this and make this fit within our document if you want to change it in terms of upscaling it or downscaling it. So first of all, we have this scaling option here, and we have all these different kind of preset options and stuff. But what this basically works on is if you have a large data set and it's too big for the paper that you have, then within these pre-made options here, then this will just shrink them down. If you look at upscale, okay, then we can click onto this and it brings up this little pop-up box here that we have, and we can adjust the percentage that we have. So say maybe we want to go up to 140, okay, and then we can see that we have it in portrait mode. And if we click into that, okay, we can see that that's bumped it up, and it's bumped it up too much there. So we can just go back into that and we can then go and drop it down, say maybe to 125. There we go. So we can see now that we're starting to get to the point where this fits into kind of the page and it takes up most of the page. But we can still see, especially down on the kind of graph here, that we've cut out a bit of the border. So what we can do, maybe if we just need to make a minor adjustment like that, then we can go into the margin settings here, and we have normal, wide, narrow, or custom. Okay, so again, you can choose any of them if you want. But if we click into custom margins, then you can see that we can adjust these manually, but these kind of do become really kind of tedious in terms of changing them and messing about with them and stuff. So while you're messing about with margins and you kind of, if you don't want to adjust them manually, then what Excel has done is made this a little bit easier. So we can say that we've got OK here, but we have these two options down at the bottom here. And if we click into the show margins part here, then we can see we get these little black dots all around. And what these do is they represent different parts within our Excel sheet. So we can see that we have the margins here, and we can just click and drag them over a little bit. And we can make that one a little bit bigger. So you're not having to adjust things manually rather than kind of doing it a percent or a little bit at a time. And we can just move it around. So there you could see that I'm being able to kind of move the sides a little bit easier. We can also move these up a little bit if you need to squidge it in a little bit more. And what you have here is the ability to make the columns either bigger or smaller depending on what you want. Okay, so we can just move them in and out. Okay, if you need a particular column to be a little bit bigger than these ones in between, we'll just make that easy for you to adjust it as you need to do. And that's it. It's really easy just to get everything kind of onto one page. And we can see that when we move on to the next page, we still have a little bit hanging out there. So what we could do is we just move things over, and don't forget, always leave a little bit to the side. Just because when you do, yeah, I mean, you kind of, not everybody's printer is going to be printing over to the side. So if we jig that over just to the point, but then we can see, let's say, it cuts off on that side there. So just be conscious about it. If you need to have a bit of a play or whatever, then kind of this is where to do it. And you can see pretty easily where things are going to be hanging out and working on that. So have a bit of play with your margins, see what you come back up with, and we'll go from there. So we can see here when we go into this and we're in the page, the print preview, that we have page 1 and page 2. We know that we're getting this error because we have this budget chart and we know that it's overlapping. So what we can do to fix this is we can go back out of here and we can go back to our original screen that we have, and we know that we have our budget down below and we know that we have all the data up above here. So to get a bit of different view, we can go up to view, and you can see that we're in normal view now. So normal view is what is classed as, you know, kind of what you see when you open up Excel. But for us, what we're going to do is look at this page layout part here. And if we just zoom out a little bit there, we can see that we're printing onto 2 pages. Okay, so we can see that 2 pages are selected there, and we can just have a look at things, and it just gives you the opportunity to move about. So you can potentially grab this and we can move it over. And by moving it over, right, we know that that's kind of moved there. So then we can say, right, well, is it this that's moving? And you can move it around a little bit. So you know by doing this that it kind of just makes your data, and you can work around stuff as you did before. So we can say potentially if we just had a look at this, and we can say, well, what's in there? You know, is it something that we can delete? Is it something that we can move? You know, and it just works out nice and easy. And if we wanted to do as well, what we could do potentially is we could change our page orientation, and we could go, and so we have it normal, and we can go file, and when we go to print, so we know, oh, what we were doing because we had that selected, so we can just select a random cell, and we can change the page orientation so that they fit a bit better. So we can go to file, we can go to print, and we know that before we had them both up and down like so. And what we could do is we could potentially change our orientation there, and we now have it landscape. So same as before where we had our chart over at the side here, okay, but now what we've done is we've just changed it to the side. But if we just come out of this and then go back into the page layout part there, we can see that it's also changed our pages over to horizontal. So we can select our data and we can just move that over, okay, making that a bit bigger there. We can see here, okay, when we've added this in, that we're still getting this 3rd page. So the reason why we'll be getting this 3rd page is because we'll have a column up here potentially, okay, that's overlapping. So if we were to insert a column there, okay, then we can see that by moving it over a column that we get rid of that 3rd page because it's no longer coming over the border on this side. Okay, we've moved everything over, just one page, just inserting that column there, and now we have everything nice and centered. So again here, you know, you can still adjust everything like you would have done normally, and it's just a great view to being able to see what it would look like if you were printing out pages and what they would come out like. Because like I say, if you want to your chart and stuff like that, you can see there pretty quickly just by using the grid lines. You know, we've got 1 on that side, 1 on that side, and 2 on each side. And although it's not aligned kind of perfectly, it makes it a lot easier to be able to just kind of move stuff around, and you know that you're not going to be printing out your extra third page kind of here or there, wherever you need to do. So if we're thinking about printing our documents, then one of the things that we might think about is headers and footers. So when you've received documents before and they've had page numbers on the bottom and they've had titles up at the top, we can also do this within Excel, and it makes the pages kind of, if you're handing it out in terms of presentations and things like that, a lot better, and they look a lot better formatted as well by doing them this way. So how we can get to these is if we go back to the view, then we can go to this page layout part here, and we can click into that. And when we click into this, we can see that we've had the data that we were working on before, and we have it all on kind of 2 pages here. So we're going to go down and we can see that we have this little kind of grayed area here that says add footer. You can see within the add footer that you have 3 little squares. So you have a left aligned, right aligned, and a center one. And what we can do is we can click into add footer there. Okay, and we can see that we get this little pop up here up on the tab, and it gives us a kind of couple of different options here. So with this then we can add the page numbers. We have number of pages, so we can see pages, okay, how many, or the page number, and you can add all this different information along there as you go. So if we add that, say, page number there, and then we can click off of it. So we can see that we've added a page 1 onto the first page, and we've added a page 2 onto the second page there. And like I say, this is fully customizable. You can change, add, and do whatever you want. And as you kind of click off of things, then it's just going to make things a little bit easier for people to understand stuff. So you can have like page 1 and 2 there, and it also works the same up at the top. Okay, so what we could do is we have the left, right, and center. Okay, and we can click into the right, say you want to save this on a system so that people can just have access to this whenever they want. Then one way that you can do this is you can just give them the file path. So then you can see that the file path's kind of arranged there, and then we have that kind of show up there. And by just doing this, then if you're not in the office or anything like that, then say somebody wants to print this information off, then they'll just be able to follow that file path, and hopefully with a shared drive or something like that, then you'll be able to just get easy access to that, and everybody knows where that information is, and you're not kind of having to go around and get everything all the time for yourself. So have a little play, see which ones you want to put into that and what you would like to do. I'm just going to make this little red box a little bit bigger. And yeah, so see which ones you want to do, add it in there, and let's see, you can add all different ones, and it's just up in this header and footer part here. So we can use current date, current time here, and it's just going to add everything into that. And you know, sometimes it can be quite good to just have the time and the date, say, up in the top corner there, and just kind of spread stuff out. So now we're going to have a look at how we can just print selected areas. And this is kind of really useful, as when we were looking at, say, this document, you wouldn't want to print everything all the time. So say you just want to look at this area here, you want your min, maxes and everything like that. So what we can do at this point is we can just click and select what we want. So once we've selected the area, we can go up to this part here and select the page layout tab. And within the page layout tab, we have this little page setup section, and we have the print area. So we can print that section, or we can click on set print area, sorry. And when we click off of it now, you can see there's a little area selected. So once we've selected the print area then, and we've clicked on the set print area, what we could do now then is we can go up to file and we can go print. And when we click in print now, we can see that we've got our footers, we've got our header, and we just have the data there that we asked for. Okay, so we set that as the print area there, and that just gives you that active bit that you have. So we can come back out of this then, and we can also get rid of it the same way that we've just added it in. So we can then go up to the print area again and clear selected print area. And what this will do then is if we go back up to print and click print, then it's going to show us all of our data again. Okay, so we can see that we've got 2 sheets back, and we've got both our chart and we have our data onto that one. So we can change our portrait to maybe change that over there. Okay, and we can see that's just bumped that back up to 3, so we just keep it on there, and we can go back. So it's up to you if you want to change it. So you can even just select this part here. Again, we can go print area, set print area. Or if you don't want to be setting print areas, then another way we could do it is go file, and then when we go print, we can go down to this option here, and we can go print selection. Okay, and by printing the selection there, and we can click into it, and it works on that same basis there, where we're just going to be printing the selection. We can see that we only have 1 page of 1, because the only thing that we're doing is just working on that. So that's 2 ways that you can kind of just select the area that you want to be printing, and that you can work on that there. So again, we can just come back off of this And again, because we haven't set the print area itself, we only selected it before. So if we were to click on print now, when we come back for nothing, that would just be that particular cell there. So if you want to change it around, then that's it. It's just kind of one option there that you have for your current selection, or you have just the active sheets in terms of what we've been working on. So the page 1 and page 2, which are the ones that show up when you're on the page layout. Okay, so as you see, they're lighter in terms of color, they're brighter rather than grayed out. So they're the ones that will show up and make available for yourself if you want to print them ones out. So the next section we're going to look at is templates and how we can make templates. So the reason we want to make templates in the first place is we don't want to be redoing all the work. We won't want to be putting all the formatting back in, all the conditional stuff, obviously putting in shapes and stuff like that, and then obviously building charts out every time, because it can take quite a long time if you're messing about and every month, every couple of months you're having to redo all these different colors and messing about and build all your charts out. So what we would do to make a chart is you would just take the base data, so say the kind of data within the months there, and you just get rid of it. And by getting rid of it like so, you can see that you're still left with all of the formulas and stuff that are left behind, obviously the formatting for the currencies and stuff, the percentages, obviously in terms of the relative and absolute formulas for the percentages. So you're not having to redo and rethink about that all the time. Like I say, it just wipes down the data as well for the chart and stuff. But as we start to input data again, then all we'd have to do is kind of change the months and stuff like that. So it just makes it a lot easier and a lot faster to speed you up by using templates. But we're going to go into how to set them up and getting them all sorted in the next video. So now we're going to be looking at pre-existing templates and how we can open them up. So we know that we've kind of made our information here and we've input all this. But if Excel has a lot of pre-built things within it already, one of the questions you'd be before kind of endeavoring on kind of building this out is, does it kind of have anything that's already pre-built for me? So we can go up to the file here and we can see up at the top here we have new, and clicking into new, then we can see already that we've got all these different templates down at the bottom here. And we've got to-do lists, we've got calendars, and you can start to see that we've got different budgets and stuff like that, as obviously Excel knows that a lot of people use it for budgeting and stuff like that. So you can just type in budget there, and let's have a look at what we've got. So here we can see now that Excel's opened up all these different budgets for us, and we've got food budgets, college budgets, and all these different stuff. So it's worth just having a look through Excel and seeing what these are potentially. So it's something very similar to what we've just done there. So we have a family budget monthly, and we can click onto that, and by clicking into it, then we can see that it just shows us a little bit, tells us a little bit about it, and maybe we click on create. Let's have a look at this, see what this one's like. So it tells you a little bit about it, and we can see we've got different tabs. We've got monthly expenses, we've got monthly budgets, so you can just input all your data and you've got additional information here. And let's say you just be able to input your data within this already, and then it kind of auto-populate all these for you and stuff like that. So it's always worthwhile having a little look, seeing what it's got, and we don't want to save that, so we're just going to jump back into ours. But just have a look, see what's about before kind of reinventing the wheel, because a lot of the times people kind of be saying, oh well, what about this, and a lot of the times it's already pre-built for people. So like loans and calculations and stuff like that, here's one to have a look at, or student payoff. So if we just have a look at this then, and we'll have a look at loans, obviously quite a lot of people use it to try and calculate loans, and you can see that it's already calculated here. So say you were getting a mortgage for say like 100,000, and you're going to get an interest rate of say 8.5 or something like that. You want the loan to be over say 20 years, and what's today's date? So we've got 25th of the 4th, 24. So we can see there now that it's calculated it all for us. It's going to tell us, our monthly payments. It's already got the principal and how much we're paying in terms of interest and stuff like that. So you can see that as the interest drops and the principal goes up and stuff, and it just gives you all these different calculations, obviously when you're going to be paying it, and if you're paying it monthly and stuff. So it's always worth having that look, seeing what's about, rather than kind of reinventing the wheel and redoing stuff. And if you need to do, then like I say, cool, hopefully you've learned how to edit things and build these budgets and things like that with this, and obviously some of the things where you might particularly want to highlight it, or even if you want to customize some of the templates already, then it's worth having a look at them. But for a lot of people, what I'd already say is just stick to what works, and what works is, for a lot of time, what's already pre-built within the systems for you. So now what we're going to look at is how we can actually save our Excel workbook as the template that we want to do if we want to kind of open this back up again. As we've, say we've had a look through, we've not been able to find any of the data that we want to find, or, there's no pre-existing templates, and we've managed to create all this kind of work. And this is something that we're going to be repeating every month throughout the year. So what you need to do to get this to that point is just start stripping out all of the data that's going to be input for the next month that you don't need to be reusing. So we're going to be leaving all the formulas and the percentages and totals and things, but we can see that we just need to select the main data within here, and we can get rid of that. We can then go to the top here, and we know that we're going to be getting rid of these, so we can get rid of them, and we can say, say we want to do month 1, say we want to do month 2, and month 3. And at this point then, kind of everything's been stripped out, so all the charts and everything have all been reverted back to normal because there's no data to pull from. Obviously all the formulas are still in there, we're getting the div 0 errors and stuff, and now we're at that point where we want to save it so that when it opens back up, it comes back to this point here. So all we're going to do is we're going to go up to the file, and we're going to go save as, and when we go save as, then we can see that we're going to select a location, so we're just going to browse, and I'm just going to save this onto my desktop. And when we save it into the desktop then, or when we start out on that point, we're going to select the different type of file types that we want. So we can see that we have the XLSX part, okay, but we're just going to have a look down here until we find the Excel template. So XLTX is what we want to save it as. And we can see that we just saved it as course, obviously because I'm creating a course, but we want to just save this as a budget, and say we want to save it as budget family. And then what we can do is we look up here, and even though we selected the desktop, we can see that it's saving it into a very specific kind of custom office templates part there, and we can save that there. So now that we've saved that and we know that this is the point where we want to get to, what we can do here, okay, and we can see also up at the top here that it saved it to an XLTX file up there, is we can go file and we can close that. So now we don't have anything, say we've started again and we want to get back to where we were, and we're now in April, we need to be working out our budgets and stuff, so we need to be opening up our template. So we'll go to file and we'll go to new, and we can have a look around here, but we're not going to see our budget in this part here, because when we look at this, this is the office budget. So, but we know from having a look at these that this isn't what we want. So we can click into the personal, and we can see there that we have the budget family. So we click into the budget family, and that opens that straight up for us there, exactly as we want before, kind of all smoothed out and stuff. So we now know that we want April, say we want April 24, we want May 2024, and June 2024. Okay, and exactly as we did before then, like we can start inputting our data, so we know that our rent would be 1,000, say electric would be 100, water we could say is 40, and we can see already that it's starting to auto-populate these forms for us, and we're already getting the totals, we're getting the percentages, and we can see down here that we're starting to get all of these as well. It's auto-populating into these. We know from our chart before that we left out the rent just because it skews it so much. So let's see, you can see that it starts to add it, so I'm just going to have some random numbers. There we go. So we can see there that we've got that first month kind of input already, and it just gives you all of your data back really quickly. So rather than having to reformat stuff in terms of colors and fonts and shapes and things like that, then just being able to input it really quickly, and then obviously your chart's going to be populating as you go along, and you should have it easy enough to go along. So hopefully that makes it a lot easier. It should speed you up, and not having to redo templates every time.